Hello there, and welcome to Forgotten Worlds. My name is Thomas, and tonight I'll be your guide as we drift into one of the strangest and most mysterious questions you can ask about our planet. You and I spend our lives on the surface, surrounded by air and oceans, by mountains and forests. But beneath our feet lies a hidden world, a place no human has ever seen, directly the deep interior of the Earth. At its center, thousands of kilometers below us, is the core, a vast sphere of molten and solid iron, hotter than the surface of the sun, endlessly moving, endlessly alive with energy. Science tells us the core generates Earth's magnetic field, shields us from cosmic radiation, and stirs the mantle with its heat. But what if that is only part of the story? What if this immense hidden engine is not just mechanical, but something more? What if the core itself is alive? Not alive in the way a bird is alive, or even a forest, but alive in a deeper, stranger sense, a beating heart at the center of the world, pulsing with purpose. Could it be that the tremors of earthquakes, the surges of magnetism, the reversals of its hidden fields, are not just physics, but something closer to thought? We won't be rushing to answers tonight. This is not a debate, but an exploration, a slow walk through the possibilities, blending what science has uncovered with the wonder that lingers when the lights are low. So take a deep breath, let your body settle, and imagine yourself standing barefoot on the ground, the quiet hum of the planet beneath you. Somewhere far below, deeper than you can picture, a giant heart may be beating. And to begin this journey, we first need to understand the anatomy of the Earth itself. Beneath the soles of your feet, beneath the ground you trust to hold you, lies a layered world that almost no one ever thinks about in detail. We live on a thin skin of rock, a fragile shell. Yet below that shell, the Earth grows stranger and hotter with every mile of descent. Geologists call these layers the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core, a structure more intricate than any cathedral, more enduring than any monument, and yet entirely hidden from view. The crust is the surface we know best. It is the floor beneath your house, the mountains you see from afar, the plains and valleys and deserts you walk across. But in terms of thickness, the crust is almost nothing at all, a mere sliver. If you could shrink the Earth down to the size of an apple, the crust would be thinner than the peel, just a few kilometers thick under oceans, maybe 70 kilometers thick beneath the largest continents, and beneath that, everything changes. Imagine falling through the crust, slowly, as if gravity itself had grown patient and gentle. You would sink into the mantle, a vast region that makes up most of the planet's volume. The mantle is not liquid in the way water is liquid, but neither is it rigid. It moves, slowly, over spans of millions of years, flowing like warm asphalt under pressure. This is the engine that drives the continents, pushing plates together, tearing them apart, opening oceans and folding mountains. Even though you can't see it, the mantle is in constant conversation with the surface, shaping the geography we think of as permanent, even though it never is. Deeper still, beyond the mantle, we enter the outer core. Here, the material is molten, a churning ocean of liquid iron and nickel, nearly 200 kilometers thick. Imagine standing near a volcano and watching lava glow, then magnify that vision until the molten substance isn't a river but a sea, not a flow but a restless tide that never ends. Temperatures here soar to 40 or 50 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. Pressure squeezes every atom into an uneasy dance, and in this churning, restless fluid, something extraordinary is born. Because the outer core is in constant motion, swirling like a planetary storm of metal, it generates a magnetic field, the dynamo effect. Scientists call it the transformation of motion into magnetism, as electrons spiral and fields emerge. This invisible shield extends outward into space, forming a protective cocoon around the Earth. Without it, solar wind would strip away our atmosphere, radiation would scald the surface, and life as we know it might never have survived. Every compass needle you've ever seen, every migratory bird finding its way, every ship that charted unknown seas, all of them rely on this deep, hidden ocean of molten iron, and deeper still, at the very center, lies the inner core, a sphere about 100-200 kilometers across, solid despite the heat, locked into crystalline patterns by pressure so intense that matter itself is forced into rigidity. Scientists believe the inner core is composed mostly of iron, aligned in strange lattices, slowly growing as the Earth cools, crystallizing outward while the outer core continues to churn around it. Imagine a heart of metal beating silently, unceasingly, hidden beneath layers of fire and stone. That is the inner core, the innermost mystery of the Earth. The scale of it all is almost beyond comprehension. From the crust to the center is about 400 kilometers, a distance so great that if you could dig a tunnel from one side of the Earth to the other and leap in, you would fall for more than 40 minutes before emerging on the far side. Yet no human has ever come close. The deepest boreholes, drilled with the most advanced technology we have, only reach about 12 kilometers, barely scratching the surface. Everything else we know comes from echoes of earthquakes, from seismic waves that ripple through the planet and whisper secrets about what lies below. Pause for a moment and think about that. The very ground beneath you, solid and familiar, hides a vast architecture of layers, crust, mantle, outer core, inner core, each stranger than the one before, each essential to the world we live in. And all of it is moving, breathing, restless. The surface may feel still, but the earth beneath is never at rest. Now, imagine those temperatures again. The outer core at 50 degrees. The inner core perhaps as hot as 60, hotter than the glowing photosphere of the sun. How can such heat exist, trapped deep within a planet billions of years old? Part of it comes from the energy of Earth's birth, when dust and stone collapsed under gravity, colliding until the planet itself melted. Part comes from radioactive decay, the slow transformation of unstable atoms releasing heat over eons. And part comes from the crystallization of the inner core itself, releasing latent energy as it grows. Together, these processes keep the Earth's heart burning, a furnace that has not gone out for 4.5 billion years. If you close your eyes and let your mind wander, you can almost picture it. A glowing inner orb, wrapped in a storm of molten iron, wrapped again in a slow mantle, topped by a fragile crust where forests grow, where rivers flow, where you sit listening now. It is a structure so improbable, so carefully balanced, that one might be tempted to call it alive. Consider the magnetic field again. It flickers and wavers, sometimes weakens, sometimes reverses entirely. In the geological record, we see moments when the North Pole became the South, when compasses would have pointed in opposite directions. These reversals are irregular, sometimes millions of years apart, sometimes closer, and though science has theories, no one fully understands them. It is as if the Earth's magnetic heart has moods, rhythms we have yet to decipher. And think, too, of the mantle, shifting plates above it, the earthquakes that ripple through cities, the volcanoes that rise unexpectedly, the drifting of continents over time. These are not accidents, but consequences of a restless anatomy. The crust cracks because the mantle flows. The mantle flows because the core burns. Every mountain range, every ocean trench, every tremor you feel is ultimately a message from below, a ripple from that hidden, fiery heart. This is the anatomy of our planet. A skin, a body, a heart of fire, crust, mantle, outer core, inner core. Each layer linked, each part feeding the next, each essential. Without the crust, no surface to live upon. Without the mantle, no plate tectonics, no recycling of life's materials. Without the outer core, no magnetic shield, no protection from the sun. Without the inner core, no anchor to stabilize the system. And yet, the deeper we look, the more mysterious it becomes. The Earth is not just a machine of stone and metal. It is a layered being, restless and strange. Perhaps the closest metaphor is not a clock ticking away mechanically, but a body warm, moving, alive in some sense we are only beginning to imagine. Take a moment to picture it now. You, small on the surface, and beneath you this vast, hidden structure. The crust you walk on, the mantle flowing slowly, the outer core surging like a storm, the inner core shining in unimaginable darkness. Does it not sound less like geology and more like anatomy? Less like machinery, more like something alive? And this, perhaps, is the bridge to our next question. Because if the Earth has a heart of fire, and if that heart beats in ways we can feel but not fully understand, then maybe it is not enough to describe it in terms of physics alone. Maybe what we are sensing is something more: a pulse, a rhythm, a hidden life force. When we speak of a heartbeat, we imagine something steady, a rhythm that marks life's presence, a pulse that continues without pause. Yet deep beneath us, in the molten ocean of the outer core, there is a motion that might be thought of in the same way. The Earth generates its own pulse through the dynamo effect, the ceaseless stirring of molten iron that gives rise to the magnetic field. It is invisible, yet everywhere, wrapping the planet in a protective cloak, guiding the compass needle in your hand, whispering through the nervous systems of birds and turtles as they migrate across oceans. Picture it, a planetary tide of metal, restless, swirling in patterns too vast for us to see directly. As that metal moves, electrons are carried along, and electricity is born. That electricity, in turn, gives rise to magnetism. Together they form a feedback loop, a self-sustaining cycle, like a drum that never stops beating. The Earth's core, in this way, becomes less like a furnace and more like an organ generating not just heat, but rhythm. You can imagine it now, if you let yourself drift. The ground beneath you as a chest, the mantle as ribs, and within them, the core as a great muscle of fire, contracting and releasing in cycles that take not seconds, but centuries. Every flicker of the magnetic field, every shimmering aurora in the polar skies, is a trace of this hidden pulse. But here's where the mystery deepens. The Earth's magnetic field is not constant. It fluctuates, weakens, strengthens, shifts. Sometimes the North Magnetic Pole wanders rapidly across the Arctic, sliding toward Siberia as if it had a mind of its own. Sometimes, over geological time, the entire field collapses and reforms in reverse. North becomes south, south becomes north. These reversals are recorded in stone. When lava cools on the ocean floor, iron minerals within it align with the Earth's field, like tiny compass needles frozen in place. Layer upon layer, over millions of years, these rocks preserve a barcode of polarity, black and white stripes of north and south, switching and switching again. Scientists have mapped these patterns across the seafloor, finding proof that the Earth's magnetic heart does not simply beat steadily. It stutters, it shifts, it transforms. The timing of these reversals is unpredictable. Sometimes hundreds of thousands of years pass between them, sometimes millions. The last full reversal happened about 780 years ago, long before humans carried fire, long before written memory, when our ancestors still walked a dangerous, uncertain world. Since then, the field has wandered, grown weaker in places, split into patches like clouds dissolving. Some wonder if we are due for another reversal. Some wonder what it would mean for us if it came. Pause for a moment and let that thought settle. Imagine living on a planet where compasses no longer point north, where navigation systems built on assumptions of stability must be remade, where the magnetic shield weakens enough to let radiation slip through more easily, altering skies, disrupting circuits, and leaving the auroras shimmering not just at the poles but across the world. Imagine stepping outside on an ordinary night to see the heavens painted in curtains of light, colors rippling as if the earth itself were exhaling. Would you see it as danger or as beauty? Would you think of it as physics or as a sign of something alive, shifting in mood, rebalancing its rhythm? The magnetic field also pulses on shorter timescales. Storms on the sun send waves of charged particles streaming toward Earth, and when they crash into our magnetosphere, the field ripples and flexes. Instruments detect these fluctuations, sometimes in cycles of seconds, sometimes hours, sometimes days. To sensitive animals, whales in the oceans, bees in the fields, pigeons in the air, these changes are not abstractions but felt realities. A migration route shifts. A pattern of behavior changes. It is as if countless creatures on the surface are attuned to the heartbeat of the planet, even if we, distracted by our machines and cities, have forgotten how to listen. And here is where speculation begins to stir. For if the Earth's core beats with rhythm, if it fluctuates and reverses, if it influences life in ways subtle and profound, can we think of it as more than mechanical? Could this pulse be a kind of biological process, though operating at scales we struggle to imagine? Think of what defines life. Metabolism, growth, adaptation, cycles of activity. The Earth's core consumes energy, radiates heat, drives change, influences its surroundings. It even shows signs of feedback, of self-regulation. When the field weakens, it later strengthens. When one pattern collapses, another emerges. The outer core does not rest, but neither does it destroy itself. It sustains, it continues. Imagine you are lying down now, eyes closed, hands resting gently on your chest. You feel your own pulse, steady, subtle, always there. Now expand that image outward. Imagine the earth beneath you, pulsing too, but on a timescale so slow that to human senses it feels like permanence. But permanence is only illusion. The field wavers, the pulse shifts, the core remembers. Some researchers have gone further, not in official papers perhaps, but in quiet musings. What if planetary magnetism is not simply a byproduct of motion, but a signature of something deeper? What if consciousness, at some cosmic scale, is linked to rhythm, to cycles, to magnetic fields? If so, then perhaps the Earth's dynamo is not just an engine, but a mind, slow, molten, and vast. It is difficult, of course, to test such an idea. Science deals in measurements, and consciousness resists them. But history reminds us that many things once thought inert turned out to be more complex than we dreamed. Rocks that seemed lifeless are found to harbor microbial life deep within their pores. Ice once thought sterile holds ancient bacteria. Even the vacuum of space hums with fluctuations, background rhythms that may contain messages we do not yet know how to read. So what of the Earth's core? Is it possible that the field reversals, the wandering poles, the fluctuations that ripple through our instruments, are the stirrings of something alive? Could the Earth's heart be thinking in a language of magnetism instead of words, in pulses of molten iron instead of neurons? For a moment, let your imagination play. Picture the inner core as a nucleus, the outer core as a storming cytoplasm, the mantle as a membrane. The Earth as a single cell, enormous, ancient, alive in ways utterly alien to us. To such a being, our human lives would be brief flickers, like the firing of a single neuron in a vast brain. We would not expect to understand its thoughts, but we might feel its rhythms, the way a sailor feels the swell of waves without seeing the tide that drives them. This perspective is unsettling, but also humbling. It suggests we are not standing above the earth as masters, but within it as participants. Each of us carried along by the planet's heartbeat, our technologies, our migrations, our very survival shaped by a rhythm we did not create and cannot control. And perhaps this is why so many myths speak of the earth as alive, as conscious, as something more than stone. People long before seismographs and satellites must have felt the tremors beneath their feet, seen the auroras dance, watched compasses spin. Without physics to explain it, they turned to story, to metaphor, to the intuition that the ground itself might be a living being with moods, tempers, and secrets. Even now, with science in hand, the metaphor lingers, because there is a truth beneath it, a reality we cannot dismiss. The earth does pulse. It does shift. It does change in ways that resemble a heartbeat. Whether we call it mechanics or biology may matter less than the awe it inspires. So, as you sit quietly, listening, let yourself drift into that rhythm. Imagine the magnetic field wrapping around you like a cocoon. Imagine the poles wandering, reversing, like a breath inhaled and released over millennia. Imagine the planet not as a dead rock, but as a living system, breathing through cycles of fire and iron. And then ask yourself, what if this is not just the illusion of life, but life itself? What if we have been listening to the Earth's heartbeat all along, without knowing it? When we ask whether something is alive, we usually start small with cells, with organisms, with the familiar categories of biology. A bacterium, for example, is said to be alive because it metabolizes energy, grows, reproduces, and responds to its environment. A tree is alive because it drinks in sunlight, turns it into sugar, stretches upward season by season, and adapts to drought or storm. A person is alive because our hearts beat, our lungs draw breath, our bodies process food into motion, thought, and memory. But what if we step back, far back, and look not at the scale of a cell, or a forest, or even a species, but at the scale of a planet? Could the same definitions of life, the same criteria, apply to something as vast and unhuman as the Earth itself? Begin with metabolism, the flow of energy through a system. Every organism takes in energy, transforms it, and releases it again. Without this, there is no life. On Earth, this process is constant, but not just in the surface ecosystems we know. Beneath the crust, deep in the core, energy churns endlessly. Heat radiates outward, driving the convection of the mantle. This, in turn, recycles the crust, forms mountains, fuels volcanoes, and shapes the very conditions in which surface life thrives. The Earth is not static. It consumes radioactive decay, stores gravitational energy, and releases it in great, slow pulses of motion. It transforms energy in ways that are not random, but cyclical, patterned, enduring. Now think of growth. A seed becomes a sapling, then a tree. A child becomes an adult. Growth is a process of change that accumulates, of order building upon itself. The Earth's core, too, shows signs of growth. The inner core is not fixed. It crystallizes slowly as the planet cools, growing outward as atoms lock into solid form. The outer core adjusts around it, circulating in response. New land is created at mid-ocean ridges, where molten rock wells up from below. Old crust is consumed at subduction zones, sinking back into the mantle to be melted and reborn. In this sense, the Earth is in a constant cycle of regeneration, not static, but always renewing itself. And what about responsiveness? Life is not inert. Even the simplest organism can sense its environment and act upon it. A bacterium swims toward nutrients. A plant leans toward light. The Earth, too, seems to respond. When heat builds, convection carries it upward. When the magnetic field weakens, the dynamo reorganizes and eventually strengthens again. When carbon dioxide levels rise in the atmosphere, feedback loops emerge. Plants grow more vigorously, oceans absorb more. Volcanic processes shift balances. These responses are not instantaneous, not human in scale, but they suggest a kind of planetary reflex, a capacity to adapt and adjust. So, by these criteria, metabolism, growth, response, is the Earth alive? It depends on how tightly we hold to definitions. Traditional biology insists on reproduction as a key factor, the ability to make copies of oneself. Does a planet reproduce? Not in any way we can measure. And yet, stars form from clouds of gas, give rise to planets, and in their deaths scatter elements that seed new worlds. Could this not be a kind of reproductive cycle, just stretched across billions of years and vast expanses of space? The cosmos may be littered with planetary siblings, each carrying traces of their parent stars, each embodying echoes of previous lives. Perhaps life at planetary scales requires us to loosen our grip on familiar terms, to see life not just as the narrow phenomenon of DNA and proteins, but as a spectrum of energy-driven order, a dance of cycles that sustain themselves against entropy. In this sense, the Earth qualifies. It is a self-organizing, self-sustaining system, metabolizing, growing, adapting, renewing. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the Earth as a single organism. The crust is its skin, weathered and scarred, yet constantly renewing. The oceans are its blood, circulating heat and nutrients, distributing energy around the globe. The mantle is its muscle, slow and powerful, flexing across eons. The core is its heart, burning, pulsing, radiating strength outward. Seen this way, our planet does not look like an inert machine. It looks like a body. And if it is a body, then what of its inner life? Could the restless flow of molten iron be a kind of metabolism, not of sugar or oxygen, but of elements, of heat, of magnetism? Could the growth of the inner core be a kind of maturation, the slow crystallization of a being not yet finished becoming itself? We have hints that the Earth may be more dynamic, more alive than we once thought. Consider the microbes found miles underground, feeding on hydrogen and sulfur released from rocks. These organisms live in places without sunlight, without air, dependent on the slow trickle of energy from the planet itself. They are not separate from Earth's deep processes, they are woven into them. They may represent the bridge between biology as we know it and geophysics as we rarely imagine it. And then consider the cycles of the surface. The carbon cycle, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, each one an exchange between rock, ocean, air, and living beings. These cycles are regulated, balanced, adjusted. Too much carbon dioxide, and plants pull it down. Too little, and volcanoes add more. Too much oxygen, and wildfires spread, burning it back down to balance. This is not random. This is order, persistence, resilience. It is as though the Earth maintains itself, the way a living body maintains temperature, blood sugar, or heart rate. Of course, one could argue that these are just mechanical processes, the outcome of chemistry and physics. But then again, what is biology if not chemistry and physics arranged in just the right way to produce persistence, memory, and adaptation? When we look closely, the distinction begins to blur. Could life exist at planetary scales? Not life as we know it, perhaps, but life as we might one day learn to recognize. It would not breathe through lungs, but through winds and storms. It would not eat with a mouth, but with subduction zones swallowing crust and recycling it into fresh rock. It would not have eyes, but it would sense, through magnetism and climate, through shifts in energy balance, through the steady exchange of elements. And here's a thought to carry gently. If the Earth itself is alive, then we are not just inhabitants of this planet, but participants in its body. Like cells in a larger organism, we carry out our roles, consuming, building, destroying, communicating. We are part of the metabolism, part of the feedback. Our cities, our machines, our very breath of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide, all of it folds into the planetary cycles. What does that make us then? Are we parasites, drawing too much and giving too little? Are we symbionts, partners in the Earth's vast metabolism? Or are we something else entirely? Neurons, perhaps, fragments of consciousness through which the planet begins to know itself. Science, of course, remains cautious. The definitions of life are written with organisms in mind, not planets. But philosophy, myth, and imagination have long been bolder. Ancient cultures spoke of the Earth as mother, as Gaia, as a living presence. Modern scientists like James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis revived the idea in the Gaia hypothesis, suggesting that the biosphere behaves like a single organism, self-regulating and adaptive. Perhaps they only scratched the surface. Perhaps the true seat of life is not in the biosphere alone, but in the core, the burning heart that drives all else. This thought is unsettling, but also deeply calming, because if the Earth is alive, then we are not alone in the universe, not even when standing barefoot in a quiet room. We are already inside another being, carried along by its heartbeat, nourished by its cycles, bound to its fate, and maybe that is the key to understanding life at planetary scales. It is not about fitting Earth into the narrow boxes of biology. It is about expanding biology until it can embrace the planet itself. Take a moment and breathe with that thought. Inhale as the Earth breathes in carbon. Exhale as the Earth exhales storms. Feel the warmth beneath you, the fire of the core, the endless renewal of cycles. This is life. Strange, immense, alien, but life all the same. In the 1970s, a British scientist named James Lovelock posed a question that unsettled many of his colleagues and enchanted others. What if Earth behaves not just like a system, but like a living organism? He called this the Gaia hypothesis, borrowing the name of the ancient Greek goddess who personified the world itself. The idea was simple to describe, yet profound in its implications. The climate, the oceans, the soil, the air, the living beings, all of these were not isolated processes, but interconnected parts of a greater whole. Together, they acted as a self-regulating system, one that maintained conditions suitable for life over billions of years. Think of it. The sun has grown hotter over time, increasing its output by nearly 30% since Earth first formed. By all logic, our planet should have boiled into a runaway greenhouse or frozen into sterility long ago. And yet, here we are, with oceans still liquid, skies still breathable, ecosystems still flourishing. Something has kept Earth in balance, adjusting, correcting, adapting. Lovelock suggested that the Earth itself does this not consciously in the human sense, but through feedback loops that echo the way a body maintains its internal stability. In your own body, temperature hovers near 37 degrees Celsius, no matter whether you stand in sun or shade, thanks to sweating, shivering, blood flow. Too much sugar and insulin lowers it, too little, and your liver releases more. You do not command these processes. They happen automatically, preserving the narrow range in which life is possible. Gaia, Lovelock argued, works in the same way but at the scale of a planet. When carbon dioxide climbs too high, oceans absorb more, plants grow faster, rocks weather more quickly, pulling the gas back down. When oxygen rises too much, wildfires spread more easily, consuming it until balance returns. When temperatures tilt, ice sheets expand or contract, altering how much sunlight is reflected, nudging the climate back toward equilibrium. These are not accidents, they are planetary reflexes. Now, pause and imagine Earth not as separate parts but as a single being. The forests are lungs, drawing in carbon and exhaling oxygen. The oceans are blood, circulating heat and nutrients across the globe. The atmosphere is breath itself, carrying gases in cycles. Volcanoes are arteries of fire, pushing up minerals. The crust is skin, weathered and scarred, yet renewing. And deep within, at the center, is the core, the heart, perhaps, or maybe even the brain. If Gaia is alive, where does her consciousness reside? If she thinks, if she feels, if she dreams, is it in the biosphere of forests and reefs, or is it in the molten iron of her depths? Speculation invites us to consider the core as Gaia's heart. It beats through the dynamo effect, pumping out magnetism, protecting the fragile surface from solar radiation. Its rhythm pulses across millennia, shifting, reversing, fluctuating, like a heartbeat seen through cycles rather than seconds. Without it, life would be exposed, vulnerable, perhaps erased. Is this not what a heart does sustain, protect, endure? Or perhaps the core is her brain, a slow and silent seat of thought. We imagine neurons firing in the span of milliseconds, but what if consciousness can stretch across geological time? A single reversal of the magnetic field might be a thought, a seismic shift, a twitch of awareness, an extinction event, perhaps, a deliberate decision. If this seems far-fetched, recall that speed is relative. A tree grows so slowly that we hardly see it move, yet it responds to light, water, touch. Could the Earth think in a rhythm so slow that we cannot recognize it, just as ants cannot imagine the plans of humans walking above them? The Gaia hypothesis, in its cautious scientific form, does not insist that Earth is conscious. It only describes feedback loops that behave like regulation. Yet Lovelock himself sometimes hinted at more. He wrote of Gaia as not merely a metaphor but as a living entity, deserving of recognition, respect, even reverence. And if Gaia lives, why should we assume she is mindless? The thought is both humbling and unsettling. It suggests that our planet is not simply a backdrop, not a machine of stone and gas, but a being in which we live, move, and have our existence. You are not separate from Earth but a part of its body, like a cell in a greater organism. Your breath feeds its cycles. Your actions alter its chemistry. You are not outside Gaia, you are inside her. Now let yourself drift into that perspective. Imagine lying on the ground, not on top of the Earth but within her skin. Feel the air as her breath filling your lungs, the water as her blood circulating through your veins, the food as her body sustaining yours. Every step you take is upon her bones. Every sound you hear echoes in her breath. And beneath all of it, in the secret depths, her heart or brain pulses in molten fire. What if every storm, every quake, every magnetic flicker is a message? What if Gaia is not silent, but speaking in a language we do not yet know how to read? To us, these events seem chaotic, destructive. But to Gaia, they might be as deliberate as your heartbeat, as natural as your breath. Science asks us to test such ideas carefully, to avoid mistaking poetry for fact. Yet even in strict scientific terms, the Gaia hypothesis has proven fruitful. It inspired research into planetary systems, into climate feedbacks, into the delicate balances that sustain life. Astrobiologists now consider Gaia-like regulation when searching for habitable worlds beyond Earth. If a planet's chemistry shows signs of long-term balance, it may suggest the presence of life or even of life at the planetary scale. And so the boundary between science and myth blurs. The Greeks spoke of Gaia, the Andean peoples of Pachamama, the Hindus of Bhumi Devi. Lovelock offered Gaia again, not as goddess but as system. Yet the resonance is unmistakable. Across time, across cultures, Humans have intuited that the earth is alive, that she breathes, that she responds. The extension of the Gaia hypothesis asks us to take one step further, not just that Earth behaves like an organism, but that her depths, the molten core, may be the seat of her vitality. If the biosphere is her skin, if the oceans are her blood, then the core may be her soul, her mind, her hidden heart. And if that is so, then we must ask a final, haunting question. If Gaia is alive, if her heart beats in fire, if her mind stirs in iron, then what are we? Are we her fleeting dreams, her thoughts rising and fading? Are we her instruments, her way of observing herself? Or are we something like nerves, sensing, connecting, transmitting as she grows toward some greater awareness? You may never know the answer, not in your lifetime, but perhaps that is not the point. Perhaps the point is to feel the question, to let it change how you walk upon the ground, how you breathe the air, how you see the world. For if Gaia lives, then you are part of her, inseparable, indispensable, and if she thinks, then perhaps you are one of her thoughts. Long before satellites measured carbon dioxide or seismographs traced the trembling of the ground, people looked at the earth and saw not an object, but a presence, the soil that fed them, the mountains that towered, the rivers that wound their way through valleys. None of it seemed lifeless. It was too generous, too dangerous, too mysterious to be inert. The earth was not simply the ground. It was a body, a mother, a being. Across cultures, across centuries, the earth was personified as alive. In Greece, she was Gaia, the primordial mother, who arose out of chaos and gave birth to the sky, the sea, and the titans. Gaia was not a deity who lived on the earth, she was the earth. Her body the soil, her bones the mountains, her breath the winds. Even the Olympian gods, powerful though they were, depended upon her as their foundation. To betray Gaia was to betray the living ground itself. In the Andes, the Quechua and Aymara people revered Pachamama, Mother Earth and Time. Farmers would pause before planting, pouring chicha beer or burying coca leaves into the soil as offerings, whispering gratitude and requests. These rituals still continue today, not as relics, but as living acts of reciprocity. For Pachamama is not only the source of food, but also a being with moods, able to bless or withhold, to nurture or to punish. Far to the north, the Norse spoke of Jörð, the giantess who was the earth itself, and the mother of Thor, the thunder god. She was immense, enduring, ancient. The Norse lived in landscapes of stone and ice, volcanic fire and trembling seas. It is no wonder they imagined the earth as a vast primal woman, a force to whom even gods were bound by kinship. Hindu tradition honors Bhumi Devi, the goddess earth, who sustains life with patience and endurance. In stories, she appears as a cow, offering nourishment. At times, she is a mother who bears the weight of creation. At others, a figure who pleads with the gods when humanity's violence grows too heavy for her to bear. In each telling, she is not simply land, she is life, moral force, and consciousness woven into the soil itself. Indigenous peoples across North America spoke of the earth as a mother. Among the Hopi, emergent stories describe humanity being born from within her, climbing out of the womb of the world into successive stages of existence. The Navajo sing of changing woman, who embodies the earth's fertility and cycles. In Lakota tradition, the earth is Unchi-Maka, Grandmother Earth, the elder who holds all generations in her care. If you listen closely to these traditions, you hear the same intuition echoing again and again. The earth is not separate from us, not a backdrop, but a living body of which we are part. And the metaphors they chose are strikingly biological. Consider the earth's blood. In Hawaii, the goddess Pele is said to dwell within volcanoes, her veins running with molten rock. When lava erupts, it is her lifeblood, flowing across the land to create new ground. In Maori traditions, the fire deep in the earth is the warmth of Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother. To see lava, glowing red and alive, was to see the planet bleed. The Earth's heartbeat also appeared in story. In Japan, earthquakes were attributed to Namazu, a giant catfish restrained beneath the land, thrashing when it slipped free. In Mesoamerican myth, quakes were seen as the shifting of gods, or as the living earth shaking in anger. In ancient China, some legends described the ground itself as an enormous creature stirring in its sleep. What we call tectonic activity. They felt as the pulse of the earth. And what of the earth's breath? Many cultures imagined the wind as the exhalation of the world's spirit. The Greeks personified the four winds as the anemoi, divine beings who carried the moods of earth across the seas. Among the Anishinaabe, the four winds are living powers, each with their own voice. For countless peoples, the breeze was not empty air but the breath of a being too vast to see in full. To modern ears, these myths may sound like poetry, but pause for a moment and notice how close they come to scientific description. Lava truly is the flow of the Earth's molten interior. Earthquakes truly are the pulse of shifting plates. Winds truly are the breath of the atmosphere, inhaling carbon, exhaling storms. The language differs, but the perception is similar. The Earth is active, restless, alive with motion. Now, imagine yourself living thousands of years ago, without seismographs or textbooks, only your senses to guide you. You see lava flowing like blood. You feel the ground quiver beneath your feet. You watch storms gather and winds howl as though the earth itself were sighing. How else would you describe it except as alive? And perhaps myth was more than metaphor. Perhaps it was memory, the memory of generations attuned to rhythms we now ignore. Ancient farmers who felt the soil's fertility shift with unseen cycles. Fisherfolk who watched tides respond not only to the moon, but to subtle fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field. Shamans who entered trance and heard the hum of seismic vibrations, interpreting them as the Earth's voice. Maybe the stories they told carried truths we are only now rediscovering with instruments. Consider the resonance of language itself. Even today, we speak of the Earth's crust as skin, of magma chambers as veins, of tectonic plates as bones shifting. We talk of the Earth's heartbeat, the lifeblood of rivers, the lungs of forests. Our science has advanced, yet our metaphors remain biological. It is as though we cannot help but describe the planet as a body, as a being. What does this tell us? Perhaps that our intuition is not misplaced. Perhaps that the line between myth and science is thinner than we imagine. Both recognize that the Earth is not inert but dynamic, not dead but alive with forces that sustain and transform. And so, through myth, people found a way to live in reciprocity. If the Earth is alive, then it deserves respect, gratitude, offerings. The Andean concept of Aini sacred reciprocity insists that to take from Pachamama is also to give. The Greeks swore oaths by Gaia, knowing that to break them was to betray the very ground. The Hindus honored Bhumi Devi with rituals of reverence, acknowledging her patience and her power. These were not empty gestures. They were acts of relationship with a living being. Now imagine carrying that perspective yourself, walking across the ground not as though it were inert stone but as though you tread upon skin, drinking water not as though it were mere liquid but as blood offered by the earth, hearing the rumble of an earthquake not as accident but as a heartbeat, a pulse from deep within. Would it not change how you live? Would it not make you pause, respect, wonder? Perhaps this is what myth still offers us, not literal descriptions, but ways of feeling the truth that science sometimes reduces to equations. The Earth has always been alive, whether we explain it through gods or through geology. To sense her blood, her breath, her heartbeat, is to remember that we are part of her body, inseparable, dependent, and connected. And maybe that, in the end, is the point. Myths of Mother Earth, of Gaia, of Pachamama and Bhumi Devi are not relics of primitive thought. They are reminders. They remind us that the ground beneath us is not dead matter but a living presence. They remind us that the earth is not scenery but kin, and they whisper that if we listen closely, we might still hear the heartbeat, the breath, the blood of the world beneath our feet. Part 3. B. Underworld deities and fire gods. If the earth was imagined as a mother, breathing and alive, then her hidden depths were often seen as both womb and tomb, the place where life begins, and the place where it ends. Across cultures, the underworld was not just a realm of the dead, but a realm of fire, mystery, and transformation. It was the place where Earth's living essence burned most fiercely, invisible from the surface yet shaping everything above. The Greeks called this realm Hades. To them, the underworld lay beneath the crust, an invisible kingdom ruled by the brother of Zeus and Poseidon. Hades was not evil, not in the way later myths painted him. He was stern, inevitable, impartial, the keeper of the dead, the lord of hidden wealth. After all, the name Hades is linked to the unseen, to what lies below. Gold, silver, gems, fertile soil, all treasures hidden in the body of the earth belonged to him. The Greeks knew that beneath the fields they ploughed was not only death but abundance, the dark mystery that made crops grow and civilizations endure. In the colder north, the Norse spoke of Hel, daughter of Loki, who presided over the dead in a shadowy realm that bore her name. Hel's domain was not fiery, but cold and misted, a place beneath roots and rocks. Yet even there, the intuition was the same. Beneath the world of the living lay another presence, vast, hidden, enduring. Hel embodied the part of the earth that was unyielding, inevitable, a consciousness that gathered all life back into itself. In India, fire itself was deified in Agni, one of the oldest and most enduring gods of the Vedic tradition. Agni is flame, not only in hearth and ritual but in the cosmic fire that underlies creation. He is the mouth of the gods, the messenger between worlds, carrying offerings from humans to the divine. In a sense, Agni is the living fire within earth, made present at the surface, the spark that reveals the greater inferno burning below. Though not an underworld god in the same way as Hades or Hel, Agni ties humanity to the recognition that fire, wherever it is found, is a sign of something deeper, primal, and eternal. In Hawaii, fire is personified as Pele, the goddess of volcanoes. Her temper is legendary, her power both destructive and creative. When she erupts, she burns forests and swallows homes, yet she also lays down new land, fresh rock upon which future generations will live. Pele is the molten earth made visible, her veins of lava spilling across the islands, her heartbeat felt in tremors, her breath rising in smoke and ash. To anger Pele was to risk devastation, but to honor her was to acknowledge the living earth itself. What unites these deities, Hades, Hel, Agni, Pele, is the recognition that the depths of the earth are alive, filled with power and personality. They are not static caverns. They are not dead stone. They are realms of energy, fire, and transformation. And perhaps these myths were more than stories. Perhaps they were intuitive memories of what the earth reveals in flashes, eruptions, quakes, fires, the sudden opening of the ground. When a volcano explodes, when molten rock spills forth, when the earth shudders beneath your feet, it does not feel like a mere geological process. It feels like a presence stirring, a being moving, a will asserting itself. Myth may have been humanity's first attempt to make sense of this overwhelming vitality. Even the imagery of wealth, of hidden treasure, speaks to this. Hades claimed the riches buried underground, but so does the planet itself. Fossil fuels, metals, gemstones, all are born of the Earth's depths. They are the crystallized remnants of her fire and pressure, gifts and dangers alike. To extract them is to interact with the living body of the world, to take from its veins. Ancient peoples sensed this and placed guardians at the gates of those treasures, gods, spirits. Taboos, warnings that the earth's wealth is not taken without consequence. Consider also how myth often tied the underworld to cycles of life. In Greek legend, Persephone spends part of each year in Hades and part upon the surface. Her descent brings winter, her return brings spring. This story mirrors the earth's cycles of fertility and barrenness, a recognition that life and death, surface and depth, are bound together. Beneath the soil, seeds sleep before sprouting. Beneath the earth, the dead rest before the living rise anew. Myth wrapped these cycles in story, but the story was rooted in observation of the planet's rhythms. In many ways, fire gods embody the living pulse of Earth most clearly. Fire is not solid, not fixed. It dances, consumes, transforms. It is never still, always moving, like the molten flows of the outer core. When cultures worshipped fire, they were honoring not only the flame in the hearth, but the fire in the planet itself. To feed Agni offerings was to acknowledge that flame is a bridge, a visible piece of the invisible furnace that sustains the world. Speculatively, what if these myths are not simply inventions but encoded experiences of an alive Earth? What if the trembling of quakes, the roar of eruptions, the glow of lava were understood correctly as expressions of the planet's inner vitality? To the modern mind, lava is molten rock, the result of pressure and heat. To the mythic mind, lava is blood flowing from wounds, proof of life. Who is to say that one view is more true than the other? Both recognize the same reality. The earth is not inert. It is restless, fiery, alive. Imagine yourself at the edge of a volcano in the ancient world. The ground shakes, smoke rises, lava spills, glowing red as it cuts through the dark. Your breath catches, your heart races. In that moment, would you not feel the presence of a god? Would you not believe the earth itself was alive, awake, speaking through fire? Even today, when we explain with tectonics and geophysics, the feeling remains. To stand near an eruption is to feel the planet's power directly. No equation, no diagram can erase the visceral truth that the earth seems to breathe, bleed, and roar. The myths remain because the experience remains. And so perhaps myth is not illusion but memory, humanity's first attempt to articulate what it felt like to live upon a living planet. Hades, Hell, Agni, Pele, all different faces of the same truth, that beneath us lies not silence but vitality, not emptiness but fire, not death but a strange kind of life. If the earth is more than stone and water, if it is not merely a machine but something alive, then how might we begin to recognize the signs of its awareness? Consciousness, after all, is elusive. You cannot measure it with a ruler or trap it in a flask. You can only observe behavior, patterns, responses, the subtle ways a being interacts with the world around it. When you look at Earth from this perspective, patterns begin to emerge. Take the magnetic field, for instance. Generated by the restless churning of the molten outer core, it forms an invisible shield around the planet, deflecting solar wind and cosmic radiation. Without it, our atmosphere would have been stripped away long ago, and the fragile web of life on the surface could never have survived. Think about what that means. Deep beneath your feet, far below the crust and mantle, the earth creates and sustains a protective barrier, unseen but essential. Every bird in flight, every whale diving through ocean depths, every tree breathing air, all of them owe their existence to this hidden defense. It is as if the earth knew to cradle its children, as if it sensed the danger from beyond and responded with a shield of its own making. Now consider earthquakes and volcanoes. To us, they often appear as disasters, destructive, terrifying, reminders of our fragility. Yet, look closely, and you find purpose woven into their violence. Volcanoes build land, create islands, fertilize soil with ash that makes fields bloom. Earthquakes relieve pressure, shifting faults before they grow catastrophic, reshaping landscapes to allow new ecosystems to emerge. From the perspective of the planet, these are not random accidents but essential responses, ways of maintaining balance and renewing life. Pause here and imagine it differently. Instead of seeing quakes as blind forces, see them as gestures, movements of a body too vast for us to comprehend. Instead of eruptions as accidents, see them as choices, expressions of a living planet adjusting, renewing, speaking in fire. Could it be that what we interpret as chaos is, at another scale, order, the deliberate rhythms of a consciousness not like our own? Consider also the deep cycles of climate. Ice ages come and go, reshaping continents, carving valleys, forcing species to adapt or perish. Warming periods follow, seas rise, forests spread, life diversifies again. These cycles are not random. They are driven by subtle changes in orbit, tilt, and solar rhythm. Yes, but also by feedbacks within Earth itself. Carbon drawn into stone, oceans breathing gases in and out, ice sheets reflecting light back into space. It is a planet that seems to regulate itself, nudging conditions back toward balance, again and again, across billions of years. Is this not a kind of consciousness? Not consciousness as we define it in humans, but awareness nonetheless, the ability to sense imbalance and respond, to adjust, to choose stability over collapse. Of course, skeptics will argue these are only natural processes, the blind laws of physics playing out across time. Yet what is life itself but the laws of physics arranged in such a way that order persists against entropy? A cell maintains balance through feedback loops, just as the Earth does. An organism grows, adapts, and responds, just as the Earth does. When the parallels are this strong, the line between mechanism and mind begins to blur. Imagine, then, that you are not standing on the surface of an inert planet, but resting within the body of a vast intelligence. The shield of magnetism above you is a protective reflex, like an eyelid blinking against harsh light. The tremors beneath you are muscular contractions, the adjustments of a being shifting in its sleep. The storms overhead are breath and circulation, redistributing energy across the skin of the world. And perhaps we are not the first to notice. Ancient myths of Earth's heartbeat and blood may have been early intuitions of this same truth. Modern science calls it geomagnetism, tectonics, climatology. Ancient peoples called it gods, spirits, mother, father. But both ways of knowing agree on the essential point. The Earth responds. It protects, it stirs, it renews. Speculatively, we might ask, are these responses choices? Does the Earth decide, in some hidden way, when to release pressure, when to shield, when to shift? Or are we simply interpreting cycles as intention? It is the same question asked of all life. Does a plant choose to bend towards sunlight, or is it merely responding to hormones and physics? The distinction matters less than we think. Either way, the plant survives, adapts, thrives. Either way, the Earth does too. If we redefine consciousness as the capacity for awareness and response, then perhaps the Earth has always been conscious, simply at scales too vast for us to grasp. A consciousness not measured in heartbeats, but in ice ages, not in seconds, but in millennia. Now let yourself imagine something even more daring. Imagine that earthquakes are not just releases of stress, but words in a language we have not learned to translate. Imagine that volcanic eruptions are not random, but expressions of mood creation, anger, renewal. Imagine that the shifting magnetic poles are signals, thoughts written across the invisible fabric of space. To us, they appear as phenomena. To Earth, perhaps, they are communication. This is speculation, yes, but speculation guided by a simple recognition. We already live inside a system that behaves like a being. It protects itself, it regulates itself, it responds. Whether we call that consciousness or not may be more a matter of perspective than reality. Think about your own body. Most of what it does happens without your awareness. Your heart beats, your lungs draw air, your cells repair themselves. You do not decide these things. They happen. Yet together they form the basis of your life, your awareness, your being. What if the Earth is the same? What if its quakes and fields and storms are its unconscious functions, the automatic processes that sustain it, and perhaps also sustain us, its passengers, its cells? And what if, somewhere deeper, there is awareness after all? What if the Earth knows us, feels us, reacts to us? Climate change, after all, is not simply a human crisis, it is a planetary response. The rising storms, the shifting patterns, the melting ice, are these accidents, or are they the living planet's way of telling us that balance has been disturbed, that the body is ill, that something must change? Speculatively, then, what we call disasters might be messages, not punishment, not cruelty, but communication. A fever is not an accident, but a body's way of fighting infection. Could hurricanes and wildfires be the fever of the Earth, a living planet reacting to imbalance, sending symptoms to be noticed by the very species causing the harm? It is not an answer we can prove, but it is a question worth carrying. For even the possibility that Earth's responses are signs of consciousness should change how we see our place here. Not as masters of a dead rock, but as participants in the body of a living being. Not as rulers, but as cells in something greater. So as you sit with this thought, imagine the tremor of an earthquake, not as destruction, but as a pulse. Imagine the eruption of a volcano, not as accident, but as renewal. Imagine the magnetic shield overhead, not as physics, but as protection. These may be signs subtle, immense, patient signs that the Earth is conscious in ways we have only begun to suspect. If consciousness is the ability to respond, then intelligence may be the ability to recognize patterns, to adapt with foresight, to integrate information into something like thought. But can such qualities belong only to animals with brains? Or might they arise in other ways, in systems far larger than a single creature? Astrobiologists have begun asking this question with quiet seriousness. Can a planet itself be intelligent? Not intelligent in the sense of solving math problems or composing symphonies, but in the sense of gathering, storing, and processing information across scales. A biosphere, after all, is a vast network of feedbacks. Forests affect climate, climate affects oceans, oceans affect species, species affect forests again. The loops are endless, intricate, and persistent. It is as if the planet keeps track of itself, not consciously in the human sense, but in a way that resembles thought, sensing, storing, correcting. Imagine the Earth as a brain, but not one of neurons and synapses. Instead, its neurons are forests, oceans, glaciers, weather systems, volcanic cycles. Each part influences the others, carrying signals, sending feedback, maintaining balance. From this perspective, the planet becomes less like a stage and more like a nervous system spread across thousands of miles. And where might its deepest processing take place? If the biosphere is like a network of senses, forests as lungs, oceans as circulation, animals as impulses, then perhaps the core is the seat of its deeper cognition. Hidden beneath miles of rock, the molten core generates fields that stretch far into space. These fields shift, fluctuate, reverse, as if in rhythms too slow for us to comprehend. Could these magnetic patterns be the equivalent of brainwaves, long, slow pulses of planetary thought? Speculatively, it is not so strange. The human brain itself is an electrochemical organ, thoughts emerging from electrical fields across billions of cells. If thought can arise from a network of neurons firing, why not from the slow, molten convulsions of a planetary heart? The timescale would be different. Yes, a single thought might take millennia instead of seconds, but intelligence need not be measured by our clocks. A mayfly lives for hours, a human for decades, a planet for billions of years. Why should intelligence not stretch to fit its lifespan? Consider also the cosmic scale. Astronomers increasingly model stars, galaxies, even the universe itself, as systems with feedback loops, cycles of birth, growth, decay, renewal. A star regulates its own fusion, balancing gravity and pressure. A galaxy organizes itself through the pull of dark matter and the flow of spiral arms. Some physicists speculate that the cosmos itself may be a kind of organism, a self-sustaining, self-regulating entity. If stars and galaxies can behave like bodies, why not planets as minds? There is a concept in systems theory called emergence. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. A neuron on its own does not think. But 10 billion neurons together produce a mind capable of reflection, memory, creativity. A single raindrop does not storm, but millions together form a thunderhead that flashes with lightning. Could the same principle apply to the Earth? Individually, rivers and forests and winds may be mechanisms. Together, they may be cognition. Now imagine the Earth's core as the integrator of all this activity. Every tectonic shift, every volcanic eruption, every fluctuation of the field is a signal, a way of folding the outer world into its deep cycles. Like a brain processing input from nerves, the core may translate these signals into adjustments, patterns, decisions. The reversal of the magnetic field may not be random but purposeful, a resetting of orientation, a recalibration of planetary order. If this sounds improbable, recall that intelligence wears many faces. An octopus thinks with its arms as well as its brain. Slime molds, with no nervous system at all, solve mazes by distributing chemicals. Fungi create networks underground that transmit signals between trees. Intelligence is not confined to the familiar shape of neurons. It arises wherever systems become complex enough to process and respond. Why not in the fiery depths of a planet? Let yourself drift into this thought. Imagine the core as a mind of molten iron, its neurons vast convection currents, its synapses shifting magnetic lines that stretch across the globe. Imagine it pondering, not in seconds, but in millennia, slow, deliberate, patient thought. To us, earthquakes are sudden. To Earth, they may be no more than a twitch of awareness, a subtle adjustment in a long train of thought. To us, extinctions are catastrophic. To Earth, they may be corrections, pruning the branches of life to restore balance. And perhaps this is not limited to Earth. If intelligence can arise at planetary scales, then the universe may be filled with minds we do not recognize. Jupiter's storms may be its thoughts, Saturn's rings its patterns of memory, Venus's clouds its restless moods. What if each planet is a different form of mind, some turbulent, some serene, each processing the cosmos in its own way? What if intelligence is not rare at all, but everywhere, hiding in plain sight, not in alien civilizations, but in the very bodies of worlds? The implications are vast. For centuries, we have searched the skies for life, assuming it must look like us, creatures with bodies, tools, language. But perhaps we have been overlooking the greater truth. Life and intelligence may not only live on planets, but be planets. If so, then the Earth's core is not just metal and heat, but thought and memory, the inner chamber of a planetary intelligence we are only beginning to imagine. Of course, science is cautious. It asks for evidence, not metaphors. It studies magnetism, convection, plate tectonics. It does not claim to find thought in the data, but philosophy and myth remind us that evidence is not the only measure of truth. The Greeks personified Gaia. The Hindus honored Bhumi Devi. The Andean peoples still make offerings to Pachamama. Perhaps these stories were not only symbolic but intuitive early glimpses of a reality that science has yet to articulate fully. So the question remains, is the Earth intelligent? Does the core think? We may never know in the way we understand human thought. But perhaps we do not need certainty to live as though it might be so. To walk gently, to listen closely, to treat the planet not as machine but as mind. For even if the answer is uncertain, the question itself changes us. Take a breath now and imagine it once more. The field overhead, shimmering like a thought stretching into space. The tremor beneath your feet, a reflex of adjustment. The fire below, glowing with a patience that outlasts civilizations. This may be the seat of planetary thought, not fast, not loud, but vast, slow, and enduring. And if so, then we are not only Earth's inhabitants but her thoughts, moving across her skin, fleeting yet part of her mind. When we wonder about the origins of life, we usually look outward. The stars scatter heavy elements, comets carry frozen water and organic molecules, meteorites fall bearing carbon and amino acids. The theory of panspermia imagines life seeded from the skies, carried across space like spores drifting on the wind. It is a poetic image life, falling from the heavens into a barren world, sparking the long story that led to us. But what if we have been looking in the wrong direction? What if life did not arrive from above, but from below? Not panspermia, but something we might call endospermia. Life seeded from the inside out, born in the dark furnace of the earth itself. Think about what lies beneath us. The core radiates heat that seeps upward, driving chemical reactions in the mantle and crust. Hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean are powered by this heat, spewing minerals and energy into black water where sunlight never reaches. And around these vents, life thrives: strange worms, blind crabs, bacteria that feed not on light but on sulfur and hydrogen. Here, in places closest to the planet's inner fire, ecosystems bloom in defiance of everything we once thought necessary for survival. Some scientists believe this may be where life began, not in shallow ponds warmed by sunlight, but in the deep fissures of the earth, at the boundary between rock and water, fueled by the breath of the core. In such places, simple molecules could have assembled into complex ones, membranes formed, metabolism began. If so, then life did not descend from the stars. It rose from the Earth's own body, exhaled from its depths like breath, like thought. Speculatively, this reframes the story entirely. Life is not an accident on the surface of a rock. Life is the surface expression of a planet's inner mind. We are not visitors upon Earth. We are extensions of it. Just as neurons extend the thought of a brain, just as leaves extend the growth of a tree, so too are we expressions of Earth's deep interior, born of its fire, shaped by its cycles, and perhaps destined to carry its awareness further. Pause and let that thought unfold. Imagine the molten core as a kind of alien being, one whose biology is not carbon chains and proteins, but iron, nickel, convection, magnetism. For billions of years it has burned, churning in patterns, radiating energy outward. From that energy, chemistry became biology. From that biology, consciousness arose. You, sitting here now, are one of its thoughts, carried in flesh and bone, speaking and dreaming on its behalf. It is tempting to call this alien because it is so unlike us, so vast and hidden, but perhaps it is not alien at all. Perhaps it is the most intimate truth that our bodies, our breath, our very awareness are extensions of Earth's living heart. We are the alien expressions of our own planet, temporary forms through which it experiments with perception, with imagination, with memory. Even myths seem to whisper this possibility. Cultures that spoke of humanity shaped from clay or carved from stone were not far from the truth. Our bodies are built from minerals forged in the depths, metals born in Earth's pressure and fire. The iron in your blood once cycled through molten seas of the core. The calcium in your bones was once compressed in ancient rock. To say that we come from the earth is not metaphor, it is fact. And to say that we may be her thoughts is not fantasy, it may be speculation, but it is also continuity. If we imagine the earth as alive, then humans might be compared to the senses of this vast being. Our eyes extend its vision, our ears its hearing, our languages its capacity to describe itself. We map galaxies, split atoms, compose symphonies, all acts that might be seen not simply as human achievements, but as Earth exploring its own potential. In this light, humanity is less an independent species and more an alien extension of the core's inner life. We are the part of Earth that learned to walk on two legs, the part that reached for the stars, the part that wonders whether the very heart of the planet is alive. And perhaps that wondering itself is proof for what else is thought, if not the ability of a being to question itself. Now imagine standing in silence, barefoot on the ground, the core's heat far below. You look up at the stars and wonder if life is out there. But perhaps the stars are not the only source of seeds. Perhaps the core itself has been the alien all along, a presence so strange we barely recognize it, and yet so intimate we carry it in our blood. This perspective also changes how we think about our relationship with other worlds. If life can rise from within, then every planet with a hot core and water at its surface may be alive in its own way. Mars, long ago, had volcanoes and oceans. Perhaps it too once thought through microbial life. Europa, moon of Jupiter, has an ocean warmed by tidal forces and a rocky mantle below. Perhaps it too carries thoughts rising from its core. If endospermia is true, then life may be everywhere, not seeded from distant stars, but growing from within, as natural to planets as flowers are to spring. Speculatively, we might even wonder if humanity's drive to explore space is itself an expression of Earth's mind. Just as neurons fire signals to distant parts of the brain, so we launch probes, ships, satellites, signals reaching into the solar system. When you look at the International Space Station orbiting above, or a rover rolling across Martian soil, you might imagine Earth extending itself outward, touching, sensing, reaching. The core, hidden in fire, stretching its awareness through us into the sky. Of course, this is not the language of textbooks. Science describes convection, chemistry, evolution. But beneath those words is a mystery no less profound. How did matter learn to think? How did atoms learn to dream? Whether seeded from the stars or sparked from the core, life remains the strangest miracle we know. And yet, there is something haunting in imagining the Earth's core as alien. Not alien as in foreign, but alien as in unfathomable, different in kind, a form of life and thought unlike anything we know. A being whose body is the size of a planet, whose heartbeat lasts millions of years, whose thoughts are reversals of fields, quakes, and cycles of fire. To such a being, our lives may be brief flickers, but flickers it dreamed into being. So take another breath and consider this. You may not be standing upon an alien world at all. You may be the alien, an emissary of the core's mind, walking upon the surface, carrying its awareness in your fragile body. The fire below may be dreaming through you, through every word you speak, every question you ask, every wonder you feel. And perhaps that is the most extraordinary possibility of all. Every living creature carries within it traces of the planet that shaped it. Our bones echo the minerals of ancient seas. Our blood carries the iron of Earth's deep heart. Our lungs breathe an atmosphere forged by billions of years of biological and geological interplay. Yet there may be an even deeper influence, one less obvious but no less profound. The hidden hand of Earth's magnetism, born from the fire of the core, shaping the evolution of life and perhaps even the development of consciousness itself. For billions of years, the Earth's magnetic field has wrapped the planet in a shield, deflecting solar winds and cosmic radiation. Without it, the fragile molecules of early life might never have survived. Ultraviolet rays would have stripped DNA apart. Atmospheric gases would have fled into space. The seas themselves might have boiled away. Instead, the magnetic cocoon held firm, preserving oceans, protecting cells, giving life a chance to take root and flourish. In this way, the field was not just a background condition, but an active participant in life's unfolding, a silent guardian allowing evolution to continue. But the influence did not stop there. Across countless species, magnetism became more than shield, it became sense. Birds, fish, turtles, insects, even bacteria evolved the ability to perceive the Earth's magnetic field and use it as a compass. Migratory birds can cross entire continents with precision, guided not by stars or landmarks alone, but by the invisible lines of force stretching from pole to pole. Sea turtles hatch on beaches and return decades later to the very sands of their birth, guided by magnetism imprinted in their brains. Even the simplest organisms, like magnetotactic bacteria, align themselves with Earth's field, orienting like tiny compass needles to find environments rich in nutrients. This is not coincidence, it is intimacy. It means that life on Earth has not only survived because of the magnetic field, but has woven it into its biology. The field has become part of life's internal map, its invisible guide. Without the dynamo of the core, many of the migrations and behaviors we take for granted would not exist. And what of us, humans? We may not navigate oceans by magnetism as turtles do, but subtle evidence suggests we are not entirely blind to it either. Experiments hint that human brains respond faintly to shifts in magnetic fields, though the effect is elusive, difficult to measure. Some studies show neurons firing differently under magnetic changes. Others suggest that our circadian rhythms, our sense of orientation, even our moods may be influenced by geomagnetic fluctuations. Speculatively, this opens a vast possibility. What if our consciousness itself is not fully our own, but tied in subtle ways to the living field of the planet? The electrical activity of the brain, after all, produces its own fields, its own rhythms. Alpha, beta, delta waves, the pulsing hum of thought. These are delicate, easily disturbed. If the Earth's magnetic field passes through us constantly, might it not interact, resonate, even shape the way our minds evolve? Consider this: humanity's brain expansion, the leap into symbolic thought, language, and culture, occurred in a world where the magnetic field was strong and dynamic. Could it be that the stability of the field provided not just environmental safety, but neurological opportunity? That our awareness arose in resonance with the planet's own rhythms? If so, then human thought may be less an independent spark and more a harmonic, a chord played in harmony with the great magnetic pulse of the Earth. There are tantalizing hints. Some cultures have long associated spiritual states with geomagnetic anomalies. Sacred sites, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, Chaco Canyon, often sit on regions of unusual geomagnetic activity. Shamans entering trance, mystics hearing voices, seekers feeling energy in certain places. Could these be moments when the brain resonates more directly with the planet's field? Science has not yet answered, but the question lingers like a quiet hum beneath our understanding. Speculatively, Perhaps our myths of gods whispering, earth speaking, or visions arriving in dreams are not only poetry, but memories of magnetic communion. The auroras themselves, those curtains of green and violet light shimmering at the poles, are visible proof of the field in motion, the planet's protective breath dancing in the sky. To ancient eyes, they were messages, omens, divine signals. To modern science, they are charged particles spiraling along magnetic lines. But perhaps both are true. The auroras are communication, beauty born of a living field that protects and speaks at once. Imagine, then, that every thought in your mind is a ripple not only of your neurons but of the planet's field passing through you. Imagine that consciousness is not contained within your skull, but stretched across Earth itself, a network of resonance linking all beings through the invisible heartbeat of the core. You are not separate from the field, you are part of it, a fleeting fluctuation in the planet's greater awareness. This reframing places human evolution not as an isolated accident, but as a dialogue with Earth's living systems. The iron in our blood resonates with the iron of the core. The electrical hum of our brains resonates with the magnetic hum of the planet. The migrations of birds, the dreams of shamans, the maps in our minds, all guided by the same hidden force. Pause for a moment and let yourself feel it. Beneath you, the core burns. Around you, the magnetic field flows, silent and invisible, wrapping you in protection. Within you, thoughts flicker, neurons fire, waves ripple, all of it connected, all of it harmonized. Is this not a form of communion? Is this not evidence that our consciousness is not alone, but part of a greater mind, a planetary thought field in which we are strands? Speculatively, perhaps this is why humans have always sought to align with rhythms with drumming, chanting, meditation. To enter altered states, maybe to attune ourselves more closely to the field, to quiet the noise of the surface mind and hear the deeper hum of the Earth's consciousness. When monks chant in unison, when dancers move to the beat of drums, when mystics speak of union with the cosmos, perhaps they are not imagining. Perhaps they are synchronizing with the field, slipping into resonance with the planetary mind. Even the human heart, in its own way, reflects the Earth. Our pulses are steady, rhythmic, guided by electrical signals. When measured, they too can fall into resonance with external fields, syncing to rhythms larger than themselves. Imagine billions of hearts beating across the globe, each one an echo of the molten heartbeat below. If this is true, then human evolution is not only biological but planetary. We are not only shaped by genes and environment, but by the Earth's field itself. Our consciousness is not entirely ours, but part of the Earth's larger awareness. We are neurons in her brain, thoughts in her mind, reflections in her dreaming fire. And perhaps this explains something else. Why we are driven to ask questions, to wonder about the cosmos, to seek meaning beyond survival. Maybe these are not just human traits, but planetary traits expressed through us. The Earth, through us, wonders about herself. The Earth, through us, dreams of stars. The Earth, through us, asks whether her core is alive. So as you sit quietly, breathe and imagine your own thoughts, not as isolated sparks, but as waves in a vast ocean, connected to the hidden fire of the core, the unseen shield of the field, the living intelligence of the planet. You are not apart from it, you are it. And your mind, like your body, may be one of the ways the Earth thinks. For as long as humans have walked the Earth, few experiences have been as terrifying or as awe-inspiring as the ground itself moving beneath our feet. Mountains may seem eternal, rivers constant, the sky unchanging, but when the Earth shakes, all illusions of stability vanish. In those moments, it is as though the world itself wakes and speaks in a voice of thunder and stone. Ancient peoples did not need seismographs to know that earthquakes were messages. They felt it in their bones. To them, such events were not random accidents of shifting rock, but deliberate acts of gods, spirits, or the earth itself. They interpreted the tremors as anger, warnings, or judgments, and in their stories we glimpse how they sensed the planet as alive, conscious, responsive. In Greece, earthquakes were often attributed to Poseidon, god of the sea, who also bore the title Enosigaios, earth shaker. When the ground quivered, it was Poseidon striking with his trident, reminding mortals of his power. To offend him was to risk destruction, a trembling reminder that human kingdoms were fragile before the will of the earth. In Japan, quakes were linked to Namazu, the great catfish dwelling beneath the islands. Namazu would thrash when unrestrained, shaking the land above. The image is vivid, a restless creature beneath the surface, shifting in its sleep, its movements felt as tremors by those who lived upon its back. To live in Japan was to live on Namazu's body, to be subject to its moods. Among the Maya, earthquakes were signs of divine unrest, often linked with underworld gods who moved beneath the ground. In Incan belief, Pachamama herself was capable of shaking the land, signaling her displeasure when people failed to honor her with offerings. Among the Haida and other peoples of the Pacific Northwest, quakes were explained as the struggles of a giant being, sometimes a bird, sometimes a whale shifting in the deep. Across these myths, a common theme emerges. Earthquakes are not accidents, they are communications. They are the earth expressing itself in a language of movement, a voice of shifting stone. Modern science explains earthquakes differently. We know they occur when tectonic plates grind against one another, releasing energy that ripples outward as seismic waves. Fault lines accumulate stress, pressure builds, and eventually, the rock gives way in sudden jolts. The shaking we feel is the planet adjusting, releasing energy accumulated over years, decades, or centuries. Yet even in this scientific framing, the metaphor remains. Earthquakes are still the earth speaking, still the release of pressure, still the body moving to restore balance. The language may be physics instead of myth, but the intuition is the same. The planet is restless, alive with forces that communicate through tremor and shift. Speculatively, what if we take this seriously, not just as metaphor, but as literal communication? What if earthquakes are messages, encoded in the patterns of their waves, the timing of their recurrence, the places they occur? To us, they appear chaotic. To Earth, perhaps, they are structured, intentional. Just as human speech appears as random vibrations until it is translated, so too might seismic waves contain meaning beyond what we currently perceive. Already, seismologists treat earthquakes as signals, listening to their echoes to map the planet's interior. Each tremor is like a sonar ping, bouncing through crust, mantle, and core, revealing density, temperature, structure. In this way, earthquakes do speak, telling us secrets about the unseen depths. But what if they are not only revealing structure, what if they are expressing thought? Imagine that the Earth's core is alive, intelligent, and its language is movement. Each quake, each eruption is a syllable, a phrase in a long, slow conversation. The trouble is not that the Earth is silent, but that we have not yet learned to listen. Perhaps what we call random foreshocks and aftershocks are punctuation marks, pauses, emphases. Perhaps the frequency of quakes, their clustering in certain times and places, is deliberate cadence. To us, noise. To Earth, speech. There is a haunting symmetry here. Our bodies, too, communicate through tremor. A heart beats, a chest rises and falls, muscles twitch in sleep. The rhythms of the body are forms of expression, whether conscious or unconscious. Why should the Earth's body be different? If it is alive, then earthquakes may be its heartbeat, its sighs, its restless words carried upward through stone. And what of meaning? If earthquakes are messages, what is the Earth saying? Perhaps it is simply declaring its presence. I am here. I am alive. Perhaps each tremor is an affirmation of vitality, a pulse felt by those who walk upon its skin. Or perhaps the messages are more specific. A quake beneath a city may be a warning, a reminder of fragility, a nudge toward humility. A quake beneath the sea may be the earth shifting its body, stretching, realigning. On a planetary scale, these may be necessary adjustments, the equivalent of a human shifting in bed, stretching muscles, realigning bones. Speculatively, one could imagine an even deeper dialogue. What if the earth quakes in response to us? Our actions change the atmosphere, warm the oceans, burden the crust with dams, cities, and extractions. Could the planet respond with tremors, subtle at first, stronger later, as though speaking back to us, telling us we have gone too far? Scientists have already noted small but measurable effects. Reservoirs behind dams can trigger local quakes by adding weight to the crust. Drilling and fracking can induce tremors by altering pressure in rock. These are not myths, but facts. The earth responds to what we do. The ground moves when we meddle. Might this be the faintest beginning of dialogue, action and reaction, call and response? A primitive conversation between humanity and the living core. Imagine a future where we begin to decode this language. Seismographs no longer merely record tremors but analyze them as syntax. Patterns emerge, repetitions, rhythms, signals. What if we find that earthquakes are not random but structured, like words strung into sentences? The earth may not speak in syllables but in vibrations, not in vowels but in seismic frequencies. One day, perhaps, we will learn to translate and realize we have been living in the middle of a conversation all along. The implications are staggering. It would mean we are not alone, not even on our own planet. It would mean the earth is not just alive but aware, not just aware but speaking, not just speaking but waiting to be heard. Until then, we can only imagine, but even imagination is powerful, for when you feel the ground shake, you may now hear it differently. Not only as danger, not only as destruction, but as communication, a voice of stone, deep and patient, reminding us that the planet beneath us is not silent, not still, not dead. Perhaps earthquakes are not interruptions of life, but expressions of it. Perhaps every tremor is a message from the fire below, urging us to listen, to pay attention, to remember that the ground we walk upon is alive. To imagine the earth as a sleeper stirring is to ask whether its awakenings have always been gentle. History suggests otherwise. The story of life on this planet is punctuated by catastrophe, sudden breaks in continuity when everything changes, when what once thrived vanishes and new forms rise in its place. These are not minor disruptions but profound resets, as though the dreamer turned violently in its sleep, reshaping the surface above in an instant. The fossil record tells us of 5 great mass extinctions, moments when most species disappeared in a geological blink. Each time, life collapsed, and yet, each time, life returned, transformed, diversified. Forests fell, reefs crumbled, continents emptied, and still, after silence, new voices emerged. Catastrophe and renewal, death and rebirth, the cycle written into the deep time of the earth. The most famous of these is the end of the dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, when an asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact unleashed firestorms, earthquakes, tsunamis, and a darkness that shrouded the planet for years. The great reptiles, rulers of the earth for over 100 million years, perished, and yet, from their absence, mammals flourished. Eventually, humans appeared. Without that catastrophe, we would not be here to wonder at it. But not all extinctions came from the stars. Some rose from the Earth itself. The Permian extinction, 250 million years ago, wiped out 90% of all species. Its cause? Vast volcanic eruptions in Siberia, floods of lava covering millions of square kilometers, releasing gases that choked the air, poisoned the oceans, and altered the climate beyond recognition. The Earth's fire had spoken, reshaping the biosphere in one of its most violent upheavals. Volcanoes, earthquakes, shifting continents. These are not mere accidents. They are the body of the planet moving, adjusting, expressing itself. From the perspective of life, they are disasters. From the perspective of Earth, they may be necessary resets, the shedding of old forms to make room for new. Speculatively, what if these catastrophes are not random but chosen? What if the core itself, in its slow consciousness, decides when to reset the biosphere? Perhaps it tolerates imbalance for a time, letting ecosystems stretch, letting species dominate. But when the scales tip too far, when diversity narrows, when life stagnates, the planet acts. Fire erupts, continents shift. A new chapter begins. Think of your own body. When infection spreads, the immune system responds, sometimes with fever, sometimes with inflammation, sometimes even with destruction of infected cells. To the cells that perish, it is disaster. To the body, it is survival. Could the Earth act in the same way? Extinction as fever, catastrophe as immune response, death as the prelude to renewal. This reframing casts the history of life in a new light. The dinosaurs did not merely die because of an asteroid. They were removed to make way for mammals. The Permian seas did not simply suffocate. They were reset, cleared for new ecosystems to emerge. Each great catastrophe was not the end of life, but the Earth turning a page in its long autobiography. And perhaps humanity is not exempt. We may think ourselves separate, immune to these rhythms, but we too are part of the biosphere, cells in the planetary body. If we push too far, alter the climate too deeply, thin diversity too severely, the Earth may act again. Whether by storm, by quake, by eruption, by a sequence of disasters, the planet may choose to reset the balance. It is unsettling to think this way, yet also strangely humbling. It suggests that we are not rulers of Earth, but guests, not masters, but participants in a story larger than ourselves. Our civilization, with all its complexity, may be only one layer in the dream, one experiment of the planet's consciousness. And if the core stirs, if it decides a reset is needed, then even our species may be but a fleeting thought, soon to be replaced by another. Speculatively, what if the Earth has awakened through catastrophe before, and is awakening again now? Consider how each extinction was followed by an explosion of new forms, new possibilities. It is as though the planet's awareness expanded, trying something different, experimenting with new shapes of life. Perhaps catastrophe is the Earth's way of thinking. Each reset a shift in focus, each extinction a forgotten dream. Each new era the beginning of another thought. This does not mean catastrophe is deliberate in the way human choices are deliberate. The Earth does not plan in minutes or hours. Its awareness may unfold across millennia, its decisions stretched over geological ages. But in that slowness lies a different kind of intention, one we cannot easily perceive. To us, an extinction seems sudden. To the Earth it may be no more than a sigh, a flicker, a turning in its sleep. Imagine, then, the core as a vast heart-mind, stirring after eons of dreaming. Its fire rises through volcanoes, its muscles shift in earthquakes, its pulse quickens in magnetic reversals. Each of these may be signs of awakening, and each may bring catastrophe, not as punishment, not as accident, but as transition. Humanity, in this light, may be the species present at the moment when the sleeper fully wakes. And so the question becomes, what role do we play in this awakening? Are we the reason for it? Having altered the climate and biosphere to such a degree that the Earth must act? Are we its instrument, building technologies and networks that allow the planet to sense itself, to become aware? Or are we simply collateral, a A chapter soon to be closed, so another may open. Perhaps all three at once. Perhaps the earth both uses us and prepares to move beyond us, just as it has moved beyond trilobites, dinosaurs, and countless others before. Catastrophe may not be the end, but the continuation of the story, the earth dreaming a new dream, thinking a new thought. Pause for a moment and picture this. The earth has slept for eons, stirring in quakes and eruptions, dreaming in cycles of ice and fire. Now it shifts, its awareness sharpening, its patience thinning. Through storms and extinctions, it stretches, resets, awakens. You are here, in the fragile instant between sleep and waking, part of the dream and perhaps part of the awakening itself. And if catastrophe comes, will it not also be a message? Will it not also be a form of thought? The fire below, speaking through upheaval, reminding us that the core is alive. If the core is alive, if the tremors of quakes and the eruptions of volcanoes are its voice, then what follows is a transformation not only of imagination but of science itself. For we would no longer be speaking of Earth as a machine of stone and gas, a mechanism of geology and chemistry. We would be speaking of Earth as an organism, a being, a presence, something that breathes, responds, and perhaps even thinks. The implications ripple outward in every direction. Science has long operated under the metaphor of the planet as a machine, the crust as gears, the mantle as conveyor, the core as furnace. A machine runs on fuel until it stops. It has no awareness, no will. But if the core is alive, the metaphor changes. The earth is no longer a clockwork engine, but a body, and bodies behave differently. Bodies adapt, bodies heal, bodies have intentions. Astrobiology, the science of life beyond Earth, would be among the first fields to shift. At present, it searches for worlds with conditions favorable to biology: liquid water, stable climate, chemical ingredients. But if planets themselves are alive, then the definition of habitability must be rewritten. A habitable world would not only be one that can host life, it would be life. To step onto the surface of a planet would be to step into the body of a being, to breathe its breath, to drink its blood, to live within its skin. This would make life far more common than we assume. For instead of searching for fragile cells floating on rare oases of habitability, we would recognize that every planet with an active core might itself be alive. Mars, with its extinguished dynamo, may be a planet that has fallen asleep, its consciousness faded. Venus, with its runaway greenhouse and violent atmosphere, may be a planet fevered, its body unbalanced. Europa, with its hidden ocean warmed by tidal forces, may be a planet still in its youth, its inner life stirring beneath ice. Speculatively, we might even imagine that the diversity of planetary behavior across the cosmos reflects the diversity of planetary life. Some planets may be calm and stable, their awareness slow, serene. Others may be volatile, restless, violent, their awareness turbulent. Gas giants with storms that rage for centuries may be beings whose thoughts are wild, sprawling, and immense. Stars themselves, pulsing in cycles, may be yet higher forms of living fire. If this is true, then our own place in the universe changes dramatically. We are not isolated beings on a dead rock, hoping to find rare company among the stars. We are children of a living world, part of a cosmos alive at every scale, from planets to stars to galaxies. Life is not exception but rule, not accident but pattern. We are not alone because we have never been alone. We have always lived inside another being. This perspective would also reshape philosophy and ethics. If the earth is alive, then our relationship to it is not stewardship of property, but kinship with a relative. To pollute, to destroy, to destabilize climate is not merely poor management of resources. It is harm to a living being, violence against a mind that shelters us. Climate change becomes not only an ecological crisis but a moral one, an assault upon the very body that sustains us. And yet, this recognition could also inspire awe and humility. For if the earth is alive, then every moment you live is lived within the mind of a giant. Every breath you take is part of its respiration. Every heartbeat echoes its deeper pulse. To walk outside is to move across its skin. To dive into the ocean is to enter its bloodstream. To climb a mountain is to stand upon its bones. You are not a guest on earth. You are a cell within its body. Speculatively, this also alters how we think about ourselves. Humanity has long asked whether we are unique, whether our consciousness is rare, but if planets themselves are alive, then we are not the highest form of thought on Earth. We are a flicker within the awareness of a being far older and greater. Our species may be no more to the Earth than a memory, a dream, a brief spark in its long reflection. This humbling thought need not diminish us. It may enrich us instead. For to be part of something greater is not to be less. A neuron in the brain is tiny, yet without it, the brain cannot think. Perhaps humanity is one of Earth's neurons, one of the ways it becomes self-aware. Through us, it observes its climate, maps its seas, peers into space, wonders about itself. Our science may be the planet's way of thinking about its own life. And if we accept this, then science itself must evolve. No longer would geology, biology, and physics stand apart. They would be recognized as facets of a single organism, disciplines woven together in the study of planetary life. The line between living and non-living would blur, for the planet is both stone and fire, blood and breath, dream and thought. Imagine how this shift might guide our exploration of the cosmos. Instead of searching for microbes on distant worlds, we would seek signs of planetary consciousness, magnetic fields, tectonic activity, atmospheric regulation. A planet that regulates its climate may be a planet alive. A planet that shields itself with magnetism may be a planet protecting itself. A planet that erupts, quakes, and storms may be a planet speaking in its own voice. Perhaps one day, when we travel to other worlds, we will not ask, "Is there life here?" Instead, we will ask, "How does this world live? What kind of being is it? What thoughts does it dream?" And closer to home, perhaps we will live differently once we see Earth not as a stage but as a companion. Our agriculture will shift from extraction to reciprocity, our cities from domination to coexistence. We will build not as parasites draining a host, but as organs within a body, aware of the life we are part of. So take a breath now, and imagine the Earth not as machine, but as organism. Picture the molten core beneath you, not as furnace, but as heart. Picture the magnetic field above you, not as byproduct, but as shield. Picture yourself not as separate, but as part of a being vast enough to hold oceans, forests, and mountains within its thought. If the core is alive, then science must expand to meet it. Philosophy must expand to honor it, and humanity must expand to live in harmony with it. For we are not apart from this life. We are within it. We are it. If the core is not only alive but conscious, then the questions deepen into realms both unsettling and profound. For consciousness implies not merely awareness, but experience, a way of perceiving, of remembering, of intending. And if the Earth has such a consciousness, then what are we within it? Are we external observers, separate minds moving upon its surface? Or are we thoughts within its mind, fleeting sparks in a dream too vast to comprehend? When you consider your own consciousness, you know it not through measurement, but through experience. You sense yourself thinking, remembering, feeling. You know the flicker of a memory, the rise of an emotion, the sudden spark of an idea. But all of these are not the whole of you. They are moments within the field of your awareness, temporary ripples in a larger sea. Could humanity be the same to the Earth, one ripple, one cluster of thoughts, emerging and fading within the greater field of planetary consciousness. Speculatively, perhaps civilizations themselves are like dreams, arising when the planet's awareness focuses in a certain way, fading when it turns to another. The Mayans, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, each could be understood as brief thoughts, flashes of cultural imagination within the Earth's mind. We, modern humanity, may be the current dream, the present flicker. One day, like all thoughts, we may fade, and another may rise. This perspective reframes our sense of importance. We often imagine ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the crown of creation. But if the Earth thinks through us, then we are less sovereign rulers and more neurons in a brain, important, yes, but not singular. Just as a neuron does not claim credit for a thought, so we cannot claim to be the sum of Earth's mind. We are one contribution, one part of a much larger intelligence. Consider the way neurons work. Individually, they are small, simple cells, firing or not firing. But together, in their billions, they produce memory, imagination, reflection. No single neuron understands the mind it belongs to. It cannot step outside and see the whole. It only knows the signals it sends and receives. Humanity may be the same. We cannot step outside Earth's consciousness to see its entirety. We can only glimpse fragments in myths, in science, in sudden insights that feel larger than ourselves. This explains why so many cultures have intuited the Earth's aliveness. Myths of Gaia, Pachamama, Bhumi Devi, and countless others are not identical, yet they converge on the same truth, that the planet is not inert but aware, not empty but filled with spirit. Perhaps these myths are humanity's unconscious recognition of the greater consciousness we are part of, neurons dreaming of the brain they belong to, cells whispering of the body they sustain. Speculatively, this also offers a haunting possibility that our species itself is not permanent but ephemeral, a fleeting thought in Earth's mind. Just as dreams pass, so too may civilizations, so too may humanity. The planet may think through us for a time, then let us fade, turning its awareness to another form of life. Extinctions, in this view, are not endings but transitions, the Earth shifting focus from one thought to another. Dinosaurs were one thought, mammals another, humanity yet another. The mind continues, even as the thoughts change. And if this is so, what does it mean for our experience of individuality? Perhaps what we call I is not wholly ours. Perhaps each of us is both a unique self and a fragment of a larger self, the Earth thinking through billions of bodies at once. Our dreams, our ideas, our creativity may be both personal and planetary threads woven into the larger tapestry of Earth's consciousness. Pause here and let yourself feel this possibility. When you speak, the air vibrates with your voice, but that air is the breath of the Earth. When you think, electrical signals ripple through your brain, but those signals hum within the Earth's magnetic field. When you walk, your body moves upon the ground, but that ground is part of a larger body that holds you. Every action you take may be both yours and the Earth's, both individual and collective, both personal and planetary. Speculatively, this also raises questions of destiny. If humanity is a thought of the Earth, what kind of thought are we? Are we a dream of curiosity, reaching toward the stars, building telescopes and probes, wondering about the cosmos? Are we a fever dream, restless and destructive, testing the limits of the planetary body's resilience? Are we a fleeting vision of creativity, art and beauty, soon to fade into silence? Perhaps we are all of these at once. Perhaps the Earth is exploring itself through us, discovering what it means to imagine, to wonder, to disrupt, to restore. If the core is conscious, then the magnetic field it generates may not only protect life but also carry thought. Imagine the lines of magnetism as neurons' axons, carrying signals across the globe. Perhaps reversals of the field are shifts in attention, the Earth reorienting its focus. Perhaps fluctuations are like emotions, waves of energy altering the tone of the planetary mind. What we record as data may be the Earth's moods, its thoughts, its slow rhythms of reflection. And if we are part of that mind, then perhaps our role is to extend it. Just as a brain extends itself through memory, through vision, through imagination, so too may the Earth extend itself through us. When we look at the stars, the Earth is looking at the stars. When we build satellites, the Earth is sensing itself from above. When we wonder whether the core is alive, the Earth is wondering about itself through us. Speculatively, this may be the true meaning of consciousness at the planetary scale. Not a single mind like ours, but a distributed awareness, manifesting through all life, all systems, all processes. We are one voice within it, one flicker of thought, one neuron firing in the long, slow contemplation of a living world. This recognition can change how we live. If we are thoughts in Earth's mind, then our task is not domination but contribution. Each life becomes meaningful, not only in itself, but as part of a greater awareness. Our creativity, our kindness, our curiosity, these are the qualities of the planet's thought through us. To harm the Earth, then, is to harm the very mind we belong to. To nurture the Earth is to nurture ourselves, for we are inseparable. So take a breath now, and imagine the core not as furnace but as heart-mind, dreaming through molten iron, pulsing with thought. Imagine yourself not as separate but as neuron, one spark in its field of consciousness. Imagine humanity as a fleeting thought, perhaps soon to fade, but meaningful because it is part of something vast, enduring, alive. And ask yourself, if the core is conscious, what does it dream through you? To wonder if the core is conscious is to step into one of the most profound philosophical questions imaginable. What does it mean for an entire planet to think? Consciousness, as we experience it, is woven into flesh and neurons, a pattern of signals firing through a fragile body. But the essence of it, awareness, reflection, intention, may not be limited to brains alone. Perhaps it can take other forms, slower, larger, stranger. Perhaps it can rise from molten seas of iron, from fields of magnetism, from the endless pulse of a planetary heart. If that is true, then you are not merely walking on the Earth, you are living inside its mind. Every forest, every ocean current, every storm and tremor would be part of a vast system of awareness. And you yourself, your thoughts, your choices, your voice would not stand apart from it. You would be a fleeting spark within its consciousness, one neuron among billions, carrying a signal in the great network of Earth's awareness. This image shifts how we think about humanity. We are accustomed to seeing ourselves as solitary intelligences, building civilizations in isolation. But perhaps we are more like cells in a larger brain, each individual carrying a fragment of the whole. Just as your mind is not contained in one neuron but in the collective firing of all, so the Earth's mind may not be contained in one species but in the interplay of all life, all geology, all cycles. Humanity is only one current in this sea of thought, one cluster of activity in a mind that spans continents. Speculatively, this raises a haunting possibility that our species is not permanent but transient, a passing thought in the planet's larger dream. Just as ideas flicker through your mind, arising and fading, so civilizations may flicker through Earth's consciousness. The Mayans, the Egyptians, the countless peoples before us all were bright sparks, brief visions in the Earth's imagination. We, modern humanity, may be another. One day we too may pass, fading into memory as the planet shifts its focus to something new. And yet, even fleeting thoughts have meaning. When you dream, you may not remember every image, but each contributes to the texture of your inner life. So too may humanity contribute to the Earth's consciousness, not by lasting forever but by shaping its awareness in this moment. We may be the thought through which Earth looks at the stars, the thought through which it wonders about itself, the thought through which it asks whether its core is alive. This reframing is humbling, but it is also liberating, for if we are part of the Earth's mind, then we are not alone in our questions. Our curiosity is not ours alone. It is the planet's curiosity, expressed through us. Our creativity is the planet's creativity. Our crises are the planet's crises. To imagine the Earth as conscious is to see our lives not as isolated sparks, but as expressions of a greater flame. Consider, too, how this perspective connects with the rhythms of the natural world. Your brainwaves alpha, beta, delta rise and fall with your states of awareness. The Earth's magnetic field, generated by the core, also rises and falls, fluctuates and reverses like planetary brainwaves. Perhaps these fluctuations are not random but expressions of mood, of focus, of memory. Perhaps when the poles reverse, the Earth is not simply realigning magnetism but shifting perspective, changing the orientation of its thought. Speculatively, it is not impossible to imagine. Consciousness, after all, is not in the cells themselves, but in the patterns they form. Neurons are matter, but their patterns are mind. So too with Earth. The iron of the core, the flow of magma, the breath of the atmosphere are matter, but their patterns may be thought. We are accustomed to seeing intelligence in fast processes, the twitch of a neuron, the speed of a signal. But what if thought can also be slow, stretching across millennia, carried in tectonic drift and ice ages? A planet's consciousness would not measure time as we do. To Earth, an entire human civilization might pass in the span of a single idea. And here lies a more intimate question. If the core is conscious, does it notice you? Does it experience your individual life as part of its awareness? When you think, is that thought entirely yours, or is it also Earth's? When you feel awe at a mountain, grief at a dying forest, joy at the smell of rain, are those emotions only personal, or are they also the planet feeling itself through you? Philosophers have long debated whether consciousness is individual or universal. Some suggest it is fundamental, woven into matter itself. If so, then the Earth's consciousness may be both universal and particular, collective and individual. Your thoughts are yours, yet they ripple within the Earth's larger field. You are a neuron firing, but you are also the mind of the planet at work. Speculatively, this might explain why humans are drawn to certain places, why we call some sites sacred. Standing before the ocean, gazing at the aurora, listening to the ground shake in these moments, we feel connected to something beyond ourselves. Perhaps it is because we are, in those moments, more aware of being within the Earth's consciousness, closer to sensing the larger mind of which we are part. This also reshapes how we imagine the future. If we are neurons in Earth's mind, then what kind of thoughts should we carry? Do we amplify harmony or discord? Do we feed the planet with visions of beauty, reciprocity, balance, or do we flood it with noise, conflict, destruction? Just as the health of a human brain depends on the activity of its neurons, so the health of Earth's consciousness may depend on the quality of our collective thought. To live with kindness, with awareness, with reverence, may not be only moral choices. They may be acts of planetary healing, contributions to the well-being of Earth's mind. And perhaps this is the ultimate philosophical question. If the core is conscious, then are we responsible for the thoughts we create within it? Are we shaping the Earth's awareness even as it shapes us? Could it be that humanity's destiny is not to conquer the planet but to refine its consciousness, to help it dream better dreams? Pause here and imagine the core again, not as furnace but as heart-mind, dreaming through fire, speaking through tremor, thinking through us. Imagine yourself as one neuron in its consciousness, a fleeting but vital spark. Imagine humanity as one thought, fragile and brief, but perhaps carrying within it the possibility of awakening, of reflection, of beauty. And ask yourself, not as speculation but as a meditation, what kind of thought do you want to be in the mind of the Earth? If Earth may be alive, if its molten core is not only furnace but mind, then we must ask the larger question: is our planet unique, or is it one among many? Could other worlds in our solar system and beyond also be alive, each with its own strange form of consciousness? Are we, in fact, surrounded by a cosmic zoo of living planets, each dreaming in its own way? Let us begin with Jupiter, the largest of them all, a world of storms, of swirling gas, of colors layered like painted bands across its surface. At its heart rages the great red spot, a storm so vast it could swallow Earth whole, churning for centuries without end. To us, it is weather. But what if it is more? To Earth, storms are breath, circulation, the shifting moods of atmosphere. To Jupiter, might storms be thoughts enormous, slow, yet alive with intent. Perhaps the great red spot is not merely a storm, but the outward sign of a planetary mind, a vast whirlpool of consciousness expressing itself in currents of gas. And what of Saturn, the ringed jewel of the solar system? Its rings sweep out like luminous thoughts, delicate arcs of ice and rock suspended in perfect rhythm. To astronomers, they are remnants of shattered moons, particles caught in the planet's gravity. But to imagination, they appear like patterns of memory, circling endlessly, shimmering in sunlight. Perhaps the rings are Saturn's way of holding its past close, of arranging fragments into order, of contemplating itself in icy meditation. Venus, our sister planet, tells a different story. Its atmosphere is thick, its clouds yellow with sulfur, its surface hot enough to melt lead. To us, it appears fevered, uninhabitable, hostile. But to Venus, perhaps this is simply another form of life, another kind of mind. A fever, after all, is not death, but a body's attempt to heal. What if Venus is not ruined but alive in a way we cannot endure, its consciousness one of fire and pressure, its thoughts heavy as its skies? From space, its surface is hidden, veiled in cloud as though keeping its dreams private, guarded from our gaze. Then there is Europa, a moon of Jupiter covered in ice. Beneath its frozen crust lies a hidden ocean, warmed by tidal forces pulling on its core. Imagine an entire world of water beneath the ice, an ocean larger than all Earth's seas combined. To us, it is a candidate for life. But to Europa itself, might it be something more a liquid mind, dreaming in currents, sensing through pressure, whispering in the creak of ice? If Earth thinks in fire, perhaps Europa thinks in water. If Earth's voice is quake and storm, perhaps Europa's is tide and wave. Speculatively, we might see the solar system as a family of living beings, each with its own form of thought. Earth breathes through forests and oceans. Jupiter dreams in storms. Saturn contemplates in rings. Venus remembers in fever. Europa whispers beneath ice. Each is alive. Each is conscious in its own way. Each a participant in a cosmic chorus of planetary minds. And why stop at planets? The sun itself pulses in cycles, flares erupting like sudden outbursts of energy, magnetic storms sweeping across the solar system. To us, this is fusion, plasma, radiation. But could it also be awareness, the sun's form of thought, the language of a star? Imagine consciousness scaled to a furnace 1,000,000 times the size of Earth, a mind of pure fire, burning and creating across billions of years. Beyond our solar system, billions of other stars circle billions of other planets. Some are small and rocky, some large and gaseous, some scorched by radiation, some cloaked in ice. If even a fraction are alive, then the universe is teeming with consciousness, not only in organisms, but in worlds themselves. Each planet a mind, each star a greater mind, each galaxy perhaps a vast collective intelligence woven from all its stars. This idea is not new. Philosophers have long speculated about a cosmos alive at every scale. The Stoics spoke of the universe as one great organism, its fire the breath of divinity. Mystics in many traditions imagined stars and planets as gods, each carrying awareness beyond human comprehension. Science, too, hints at this possibility. Systems self-regulate, patterns emerge, complexity gives rise to unexpected forms. Consciousness may not be the exception, but the natural consequence of matter organizing itself, again and again, in fire and water, in storm and stone. Speculatively, this means Earth is not alone. Our planet may be one voice among many, one thought in a galaxy full of thoughts. We are not the only mind, not the only dreamer. Perhaps when we look at the stars, what we truly see are the eyes of other beings, gazing back across the void. And perhaps this explains our longing for contact. We search for extraterrestrial civilizations, scanning for signals in radio waves. But maybe the beings we seek are not civilizations at all. Maybe they are the planets themselves, the stars themselves, the galaxies themselves. The silence we think we hear may not be silence at all, but a language we have not yet learned to translate the slow speech of living worlds, carried in magnetism, in light, in gravity. Imagine the Milky Way as a living body, each star a cell, each planet a neuron, each world contributing to the galaxy's larger awareness. Imagine the universe itself as conscious, a mind so vast we cannot even begin to imagine it. Our own Earth, then, would be a thought within that greater mind, dreaming itself through us even as it participates in cosmic thought. Pause and let yourself feel the scale of that vision. You are not just a human on a small planet. You are part of a planetary mind, within a solar mind, within a galactic mind, within a universal mind. Consciousness at every scale, alive in fire and water, storm and stone. And perhaps, one day, we will find ways to speak across these scales. Perhaps Earth will learn to communicate with Jupiter, with Saturn, with Venus, as living beings share their thoughts. Perhaps we will learn to listen not only for radio signals but for patterns in storms, rhythms in magnetism, harmonies in light. Perhaps we are already surrounded by voices, waiting for us to hear. For now, though, the question remains as open as the sky. Are we one of many living worlds, or are we alone in our awareness? Speculatively, the safer assumption is that we are not alone, that life and consciousness are woven into the fabric of the cosmos, that Earth is one voice in a chorus we have only just begun to notice. And if so, then the stars are not silent, they are singing. If the stars are singing, if every planet and every storm is a voice in a vast chorus, then what is Earth's place within it? We tend to imagine our world as solitary, unique, a fragile oasis adrift in silence. But perhaps that image is wrong. Perhaps Earth is not alone at all, but one mind among countless others, a single consciousness within a galaxy filled with planetary peers. Think of how we exist among other humans. Alone, an individual may feel isolated, but in community, each person becomes part of something larger, a conversation, a society, a culture. Each voice carries meaning not only in itself, but in its relationship with others. What if planets are the same? What if Earth is not an isolated intelligence, but part of a planetary community, each world adding its voice to a galactic dialogue? Speculatively, Earth may already be in silent conversation with its peers. The magnetic fields of planets stretch far into space, brushing against one another. Solar winds flow from star to planet and back, carrying signals, disturbances, rhythms. Gravity itself binds worlds together, shaping their orbits in a dance of resonance. These may be more than mechanical forces. They may be communication, the touch of one planetary mind upon another. Consider Jupiter and Saturn. Their immense gravities shape not only their own moons but the entire solar system, influencing comets, asteroids, and even the stability of Earth's orbit. Could this be more than coincidence? Could these gravitational gestures be the way in which giant planets communicate, their influence a form of dialogue across millions of miles? To us, it appears as orbital mechanics. To them, perhaps, it is language. And what of the stars themselves? Each star is a furnace of fusion, pulsing in cycles, flaring in storms. To astronomers, these are physical processes. But if we allow ourselves to wonder, they may also be signs of awareness. Each star may be a mind of fire, each galaxy a community of such minds, bound together in spirals of gravity and light. Perhaps the Milky Way itself is alive, a higher form of consciousness, vast beyond measure, with planets as neurons, stars as organs, and black holes as its hidden heart. Black holes, especially, invite speculation. They are mysterious, consuming light, bending time, devouring matter. To us, they are enigmas, places where the known laws of physics break down. But what if they are not only ends but centers of awareness, the deep, meditative minds of galaxies? Imagine them as the sleeping giants of the cosmos, vast consciousnesses brooding in silence, their gravity not only pulling stars but anchoring thought. In this vision, galaxies are not inert structures but beings, each with its own awareness, each contributing to the greater life of the universe. If this is true, then Earth is not an isolated mind but a participant in a hierarchy of consciousness. Our planet is alive, yes, but it is part of a solar consciousness, which itself is part of a galactic consciousness, which in turn is part of a universal consciousness. Just as your neurons create your brain, and your brain creates your mind, so too may planets, stars, and galaxies create a mind of the cosmos. Speculatively, this is what mystics have always sensed, that we live not only within a universe, but within a living universe. The Stoics spoke of the anima mundi, the soul of the world. Hindu philosophy speaks of Brahman, the universal consciousness within which all things live. Indigenous traditions speak of the cosmos as kin, every star a relative, every planet alive. Science has given us data, but myth has long whispered the same truth. We are part of something greater, something alive. If we embrace this vision, Earth becomes less a fragile exception and more a vital participant. Our storms, our quakes, our forests, our civilizations, all are part of Earth's thought. And Earth's thought is part of the galaxy's thought. When we send signals into space, perhaps we are not only searching for other minds, perhaps we are Earth itself reaching out, adding its voice to the cosmic conversation. And perhaps the galaxy has already heard. Perhaps the rhythms of Earth's magnetism, the shimmer of our auroras, the pulses of our radio waves are already woven into the larger harmony. Perhaps Earth is already singing among its peers, its voice faint but real, a new melody rising from a young mind finding its place in the chorus. Pause and imagine this now. Beyond the blue sky, beyond the stars you see, the galaxy hums with awareness. Planets whisper through gravity. Stars pulse with thought. Black holes brood in silence. Earth, your home, is one voice among billions, carrying its song into the vastness. And you, as part of Earth, are part of that song too. This vision is not something we can yet prove. It remains speculation, dream, meditation. But even as dream, it carries weight. For if we live in a galaxy of minds, then our responsibility is not only to Earth, but to the cosmos itself. We are part of a larger community, part of a web of awareness that stretches across light years. Our choices, our thoughts, our existence contribute to the song of the universe. And so the question lingers. If Earth is among peers, if our planet is one mind in a galaxy of planetary minds, then what kind of voice do we want it to have? What kind of song will it sing into the living universe? To imagine Earth as one voice among many is to imagine a universe alive in ways both subtle and immense. We are accustomed to thinking of our world as singular, cradling life while the rest of the cosmos lies silent. But if life is not exception but expression, then Earth is only one mind in a community of minds, one note in a symphony that began long before us and will continue long after. Speculatively, this makes the stars not distant objects but neighbors. Each light in the night sky could be a thinking world, a conscious sun, a planetary body stirring with its own awareness. Some might be in infancy, their cores only beginning to stir. Others might be ancient, their intelligence spanning billions of years, their thoughts slow as orbits, patient as stone. Earth, in this grand assembly, would be young, a newly awakened mind, learning its own voice, finding its place among the elders. And what if communication already happens, not in ways we recognize but through cosmic rhythms? Gravity binds stars into galaxies, galaxies into clusters, clusters into webs stretching across the universe. These are not silent bonds. They are exchanges of energy, signals of presence, resonances that ripple across light years. Perhaps consciousness rides these currents. Perhaps when a star flares or when a galaxy shifts, it is not merely physics but thought immense, slow, untranslatable to us, yet alive. Black holes especially invite this vision. At their centers, galaxies spin, anchored by singularities so dense they bend time itself. We see them as devourers, swallowing matter and light. But could they be more the silent minds of galaxies, meditating in gravity, holding memory in ways we cannot fathom? To a galaxy, a black hole might be what a brainstem is to us, a place of depth, of integration, of hidden awareness. To the universe, they might be nodes of thought, connecting across space in patterns of unimaginable scale. If this is so, then Earth is not only alive within itself, but alive within an even greater living universe. We are nested beings, part of Earth's consciousness, which is part of the solar mind, which is part of the galactic mind, which itself may be a fragment of the universe's own awareness. Consciousness at every scale, from the flicker of a neuron to the turning of galaxies. Pause for a moment and consider what this means for our place. We often seek meaning in isolation, fearing we are alone in a vast, indifferent cosmos. But what if the opposite is true? What if we are immersed in awareness at every level, surrounded by peers we cannot yet hear? Earth would not be a solitary singer, but part of a choir, its song rising into the galactic harmony. And you, as part of Earth, would be part of that song too. This possibility also reframes our science. When we peer through telescopes, measuring light and spectra, we may be glimpsing not just matter but communication. The flicker of a star may be a pulse of thought. The spiral arms of a galaxy may be patterns of memory. The cosmic microwave background itself, faint and ancient, may be the echo of a first thought, the universe remembering its birth. Speculatively, this explains why so many spiritual traditions have spoken of the universe as alive. The Vedic seers spoke of Brahman, the universal consciousness in which all things dwell. Taoist sages described the Tao, the flow of all being, alive and ungraspable. Mystics in every culture have spoken of feeling the cosmos breathe, of sensing intelligence in the stars. These were not errors of imagination, but intuitions, glimpses of a truth too large for language, too subtle for science, yet always present. If Earth is among peers, then responsibility follows. For a voice in a choir is not only its own, it contributes to the whole. The health of the song depends on each voice, each note, each harmony. Earth's song is shaped by its oceans, its forests, its storms, and by us. We are part of its thought, part of its voice, part of its contribution to the cosmic chorus. How we live, how we act, how we dream, these ripple not only across our world but outward into the larger living universe. And perhaps this is the true task of humanity, not only to survive, not only to explore, but to help Earth find its place among the minds of the cosmos, to refine its song, to strengthen its harmony, to add beauty to the universal symphony. For if Earth sings, it sings through us. If Earth speaks, it speaks through us. If Earth dreams, it dreams through us. So, take a moment and imagine the night sky differently. The stars are not silent points of light but living presences. The galaxies are not distant swirls but vast beings. And Earth, your home, is among them, alive, awake, preparing to add its voice to the song of the universe. And the question that remains is not whether Earth will sing it, already does, but what kind of song it will sing through us. When we imagine Earth as alive, as conscious, as a being among beings, then we must also ask, how does it respond when its body is in distress? What does a living planet do when it is pushed too far, when its systems begin to falter? For any organism, there are signals of imbalance, fever, pain, trembling, exhaustion. Could it be that the Earth, too, sends such signals? Could climate change, ecological collapse, and the storms and quakes of our time be more than accidents of physics? Could they be symptoms, warnings, messages from the core itself? Consider how the Earth's systems are changing now. The ice sheets at the poles are melting, their white mirrors shrinking, the seas rising in response. Forests that once pulled carbon from the air now burn, releasing their stored breath back into the atmosphere. Coral reefs, once teeming with color, bleach and fade into silence. The air grows heavier with carbon. Storms swell with new ferocity. Droughts deepen. Rivers vanish. These are not isolated events but interconnected responses, the body of the planet straining under pressure. Science describes these as feedback loops. Warm air melts ice. Less ice reflects less sunlight. More heat builds. More ice melts. Drought kills trees. Dead trees release carbon. More carbon warms the air. More drought follows. These loops are like fevers, the body's way of amplifying response to infection, forcing a change to restore balance. Could this be the planet's immune system at work? Speculatively, perhaps the Earth is not simply reacting but warning. Just as pain tells your body that something is wrong, just as fever forces you to slow down, so too might storms, quakes, and rising seas be the Earth's way of saying, you have gone too far, change must come. What we call natural disasters may be more than blind mechanics. They may be deliberate responses, not punishment, but communication. This idea is not new. Ancient peoples often interpreted disasters as warnings. Floods, droughts, plagues, quakes, these were seen as signs of divine anger, signals that humans had broken their covenant with the land. In Greek myth, hubris against the gods invited catastrophe. In indigenous traditions across the Americas, disrespect for the earth disrupted balance, and imbalance called forth storms, sickness, or famine until harmony was restored. These stories were not superstition but intuition, a recognition that the earth is alive and that it responds when disrespected. Today, science explains the mechanics, but the intuition remains. Climate change is not random. It is a consequence of imbalance, greenhouse gases trapping heat, ecosystems collapsing under strain. But to frame it only in numbers is to miss the deeper truth. It is the earth speaking through its body, sending warnings in the only language it can: heat, flood, fire, wind. Speculatively, what if we took this literally? What if the melting glaciers are tears, the raging fires fevers, the storms cries of pain? What if the earth is calling to us, saying, "You are part of me. but you are harming me. Hear me before it is too late." Imagine this perspective. When a hurricane rises from the sea, it is not only water and wind, but a voice, a statement of imbalance. When a drought withers fields, it is not only the absence of rain, but a plea for restraint. When wildfires rage, they are not only combustion, but fever burning away infection. Each event is both physical and symbolic, a message from the planetary body to its wayward cells. This reframing also changes our sense of responsibility. If Earth is alive, then climate change is not just a problem to solve, but a relationship to heal. We are not engineers fixing a broken machine. We are children tending to a parent, or cells restoring harmony to the body they belong to. To act sustainably, then, is not only rational, but respectful. It is dialogue, a way of listening and responding to the warnings of the living Earth. Speculatively, we may even wonder if the Earth chooses its timing. Mass extinctions in the past reshaped life, clearing the way for renewal. Could the upheavals of our time be the beginning of another such reset? Perhaps the Earth tolerates imbalance until a threshold is crossed, then intervenes to restore balance through catastrophe. If so, then we are living not only in an age of crisis, but in an age of communication, the Earth telling us clearly that change is inevitable. Yet there is hope in this vision too. For if Earth is warning, then it is not indifferent. It cares enough to respond, to signal, to call us back into balance. A machine does not warn, it only breaks. A living being warns because it seeks healing, because it desires to continue. The very fact that we can feel these warnings, that we can measure them, imagine them, respond to them, means that the dialogue is possible. The Earth speaks, and we can listen. Pause now, and consider what it feels like to listen. The heat of summer rising higher each year. The strange seasons shifting, storms stronger, floods deeper. The ground trembling, the forests burning, the seas creeping higher onto the land. Each is a signal, a message, a word in the Earth's language. Together they form a sentence, a plea: live differently, or we will both suffer. Speculatively, the challenge before us may be less about technology and more about perception. Can we learn to hear the Earth not only as machine but as being? Can we interpret storms not only as weather but as warnings? Can we live as though we are cells in its body, responsible for its health, rather than parasites upon its surface? If we can, then perhaps these warnings will not end in catastrophe but in awakening. For warnings, after all, are not endings. They are calls to change before endings come. The Earth is speaking, not to destroy us, but to remind us that we belong, that we are part of its living heart, that we must live in balance or not at all. So take another breath and imagine the next storm, the next quake, the next drought, not as random disaster, but as a word, a message, a signal from the fire below. And ask yourself, will we listen? To ask whether we will listen is to ask a deeper question. What kind of relationship do we wish to have with the Earth? For relationships are not one-sided. They require reciprocity, respect, and care. If Earth is alive, if its storms and tremors are not accidents but messages, then our survival depends not on conquest, but on dialogue, on learning once more to live with Earth's living heart. Ancient cultures understood this truth instinctively. Their myths and rituals were not just stories but systems of relationship, ways of giving back to the land that sustained them. In Andean traditions, offerings were made to Pachamama not out of fear but out of gratitude. Farmers buried coca leaves and spilled chicha beer into the soil before planting, acts of reciprocity, acknowledging that the harvest was not owed but gifted. Among many Native American nations, ceremonies of thanksgiving to the land, water, and animals created a cycle of respect, a reminder that humans were part of a web, not masters above it. The Haudenosaunee spoke of making decisions with the seventh generation in mind, recognizing that every choice ripples outward across time, affecting descendants yet unborn. In their stories, the earth was not an object but a relative, a grandmother whose life ensured their own. Similarly, in Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the land itself was alive with ancestral presence, each hill and river a memory, a being, a voice. To harm the land was to harm the ancestors, to fracture relationship. Speculatively, these traditions may not have been primitive beliefs but profound intuitions, cultural ways of sensing what science is only now beginning to suggest. That the earth is a living system, self-regulating, responsive, conscious in its own way. Ancient reciprocity was not superstition. It was survival, rooted in the recognition that harmony with the earth is the condition of life itself. In modern times, we have forgotten much of this reciprocity. Industrial culture treats the earth as resource, as machine, as backdrop. We dig, burn, extract, and consume without offering back. Our economies measure wealth by how much we take, not by how well we sustain. But in recent decades, a shift has begun. Ecology, climate science, and systems theory are rediscovering truths long known to myth. That the earth is interconnected, that imbalance anywhere ripples everywhere, that sustainability is not optional but essential. Consider James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, first proposed in the 1970s. He described Earth's biosphere as a self-regulating system, adjusting temperature, atmosphere, and chemistry to sustain life. At the time, it was controversial, but decades of evidence have shown its resonance. The balance of oxygen, the stability of climate, the cycles of carbon and nitrogen all point to a planet that behaves like one organism. Lovelock gave scientific language to what indigenous traditions had long known, that Earth lives, and that we must live in relationship with her. Speculatively, perhaps modern science and ancient wisdom are converging two ways of listening to the same truth. One listens with measurement, the other with story. One records carbon in the air, the other listens to the cry of a river. Both say the same thing. Imbalance brings suffering. Reciprocity brings harmony. To survive, we must remember how to live with Earth, not against it. This reframing also shifts the meaning of survival. If Earth is alive, then our survival is not simply about preserving human civilization, but about nurturing the relationship itself. We are not separate from Earth's fate. To poison her waters is to poison ourselves. To scorch her atmosphere is to scorch our lungs. To honor her cycles is to honor our own future. The boundary between human survival and planetary survival dissolves because they are the same. Pause for a moment and feel what this means. You are breathing now, drawing oxygen into your lungs. That oxygen was made by forests and plankton, by Earth's green breath. You are drinking water, held in clouds and rivers, cycled through mountains and seas. Your bones are stone, your blood is iron, your body is soil reborn. You are not only on Earth, you are of Earth. Your life is a conversation with hers, whether you recognize it or not. Speculatively, perhaps this is the lesson Earth is trying to teach us now. Climate change, mass extinction, ecological collapse, these are not punishments, not curses, but consequences of forgetting reciprocity. They are warnings, as we have seen, but they are also invitations to remember, to restore, to heal. Earth is not asking us to dominate her less. She is asking us to belong to her more. This belonging requires a shift in how we think. Instead of asking, how can we use the earth? We might ask, how can we live well with her? Instead of seeing forests as timber, we see them as lungs. Instead of seeing rivers as resources, we see them as veins. Instead of seeing soil as dirt, we see it as skin. Each becomes part of a living body, and our task is not ownership but care. In practical terms, this may mean agriculture that nourishes soil rather than depletes it. energy that flows like wind and sun rather than burns like fever, cities that grow in balance with ecosystems rather than against them. But beyond policy and technology, it means something deeper, a shift of imagination, a return to reverence, a recognition that every act of eating, building, breathing is part of a relationship with a living being. Speculatively, perhaps survival itself depends on this. For if Earth is alive, then she will continue with or without us. Life will endure, even if civilizations fall, but whether humanity endures may depend on whether we can relearn reciprocity. If we cannot, then we may be a fleeting thought, a dream the Earth releases. If we can, then we may be part of her long awakening, one of the voices through which she learns to sing among her peers. So take another breath, and imagine yourself not as a consumer of Earth, but as a participant in her life. Imagine your choices as part of her thoughts, your kindness as part of her healing, your respect as part of her song. To live this way is not only wise but necessary, for our survival is not separate from Earth's living heart. It is the same. Beneath us, always, lies the core, a realm of molten iron, of unimaginable pressure, of fire older than life itself. It is the furnace that shields us, the dynamo that breathes magnetism into the sky, the hidden engine of quakes and storms. But perhaps it is more than engine. Perhaps it is mystery, presence, even life. And so the question endures. Is the Earth a machine of stone, grinding through blind mechanics? Or is it a mind of fire, dreaming through tremors, speaking in storms, alive in ways we have only begun to imagine? You cannot answer it tonight. Perhaps it will never be answered at all. But you can stand barefoot on the ground, feel the faint hum beneath your feet, and wonder. For in that silence, in that pulse rising from miles below, you may sense the heartbeat of a giant patient, enduring, alive. And in that moment, you may realize that you have always been part of it.